Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it.
Alice woke up in the middle of the night and felt inexplicably anxious. The usual silence outside the window was disturbed by voices and some crackling. She opened her eyes and started to wake up her husband, who was snoring loudly. "Alex, Alex, can't you sleep?" Alex mumbled and rolled over to the other side and fell asleep again. "Do you hear?" "What?" "There's a noise outside. Go and see." Nothing ever happens in the middle of nowhere unless they're looking for a cow that didn't come home. And no one comes to our house, he continued, yawning. "Except for the big dog, there is nothing to steal from us. And the dog is silent, does not bark. Though I say." Alex sighed heavily and struggled to get out from under the blanket. "You're a coward. Now, I'll get dressed. I don't want to embarrass the locals with my underwear." He stopped talking, and then he listened and pushed the curtain aside. "Oh my God, the stones are on fire." "What?" Alice couldn't believe her ears. Alex grabbed his pants from the chair and rushed out of the room. On cotton legs, Alice went to the window, and looking at the blaze over the house across 2 streets, shrieked. Bright tongues of flame had nearly engulfed Diana Stone's house and were slowly creeping up on retired Fiona's neighbors' outbuildings. People were running with buckets, trying to calm the unrestrained elements, and Alice didn't see a fire truck. It was still dark and fresh outside, and the hands of the clock hanging over the bed were getting close to 3:30 in the morning. When she saw her husband rushing to help, Alice shook off her stupor and, making sure the children were sound asleep, hurried outside. As Alice ran to where the house engulfed in flames, a fire engine appeared on the hillside. Without a siren, it flew at breakneck speed and kicked up clouds of dust behind it. "They're here," Fiona hissed. A local woman stood across the street from the gate of her house, wearing a nightgown over a knit sweater, her usual colorful scarf tied around her head, and a small bag of belongings in her hands. "If they don't put it out, I'll just have to go to the woods," she sighed. "Everything will burn. All that is gained by labor. The grass is dry. The wind is still blowing. The flames could spread to my house." "They'll put it all out." Alice tried to calm her down, watching the firemen uncoiling the hoses. "How could they? By the time we woke them up, by the time they got water from the lake, the house was already gone. I remember when our neighbor's hut went up in flames in winter, it was the same. The whole street put it out, but to no avail." Fiona waved her hand. "Diana and her daughter are now homeless, but at least they managed to escape. I don't like her, but it's not Maybe's fault that her mother is like that." Alice looked at Fiona with bewilderment. The words of the always friendly and good-natured local resident came as a surprise to her. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously, fixing her long, disheveled hair. "Everybody gets what they deserve. Don't listen to me, I'm just saying. I don't know where they'll go now. They've been living here for years, and Diana has no friends. Her husband ran away. I heard that Diana's mother lives in one of the villages. I think it's nearby. She lives there, but they don't see each other. Not for 10 years. They had a falling out after the wedding. We should call them to us," Alice said. "It's so cold, and there's nothing to wait for. They'll stay with us for the time being. Will you come and have tea with us?" Fiona opened her eyes wide and shook her head. "Don't you dare take her into your house." "Why not?" Alice recoiled. "You live peacefully, so be happy. And with Diana, only trouble will be." Alice pulled up her sweater and looked for the burned-out people sitting on a log nearby. Diana was sobbing and clutching her head. Her dark hair was scattered over her shoulders, her clothes were smeared with soot, and her face was covered with the glare of the flames. Alice had known Diana for years, but they had never been friends. The Stone family had split up 6 years ago. Louis, Diana's husband, had left the village and hadn't been back since. Maidie, their daughter, had not long ago turned 7, and in September, she was to go to the 1st grade of the local school. The girl grew up friendly and sociable, quite different from her mother. And Diana worked in the village library and has always been very closed and peculiar. Existing in her own world, she did not want to let outsiders into it. Alice looked at Fiona reproachfully. "People are homeless, and besides, you yourself say that they have nowhere to go. I'll go and talk. You shouldn't listen to me." "I'm old, but I'm in my right mind," Fiona said quickly, pressing her lips together. Alice just waved her off, walked over to Diana and squatted down beside her. "That's it," Diana sobbed, rubbing her already reddened eyes. "It's all burned up. There was nothing left. We were asleep, and then there was a crack." She wanted to continue, but unable to speak, she covered her face with her hands. Maddie looked at her mother and the burnt house and held a toy in her arms. "Hush, hush," Alice said quickly, putting her arm around her neighbor. "Come to my place. You're both freezing." Diana took her hands away from her face and looked at Alice in disbelief. "Why are you doing this? No one is immune to this. Come on, there's enough room for everyone, and then we'll decide what to do." Alice helped Diana up and, taking Maddie by the hand, led them to her place. Noticing Alice waved at him and shouted, "We're going home." Her husband nodded understandingly and ran for water again. It seemed that this battle with the maddening elements would soon be lost. Fiona was still standing across the street from her house and, frowning, watched Alice and her guests. The kitchen was warm and cozy. Alice quickly set the table, happy that she had baked a fish pie and made soup the day before. She glanced at Diana and Maddie, who were sitting silently at the table. When the kettle was warm, Alice lowered herself into a chair, only now realizing how tired her legs were. "Thank you," Diana said suddenly, wrapping her trembling hands around the mug of tea. "If it weren't for you?" "You're welcome," Alice smiled, which made her green eyes with strange brown specks, which Alex jokingly called chocolate chips, almost filled with tears. "I know how hard it is. When I was 5, our family was left homeless. We jumped out of the house in our clothes, didn't even have time to get our papers." "I didn't know," Diana mumbled. "It was a long time ago. We lived in another village then, and after we lost our house, we moved here for a while, to my grandmother's house, and stayed here. It's a nice place, beautiful." She fell silent, and then added softly, "You eat, and let's go to bed. You need to rest, at least a little." Diana, who had been watching what was happening, suddenly woke up and grabbed her head. "I have to work in the morning. I'll take care of everything, and the whole village will know what happened by morning. Then we'll pick up our things and go to the store." "You're kind, Alice." Alice blushed instantly. She didn't like to accept praise, believing that good deeds are a reward in themselves, so she got to her feet as soon as possible and began to talk. "Finish your tea, and I'll make up the couch for you." Trying not to make any noise, she went to the big room and took out freshly ironed linens from the closet. She felt uneasy. Alice stood still for a second, listening to the voices coming from the kitchen, and shuddered as she remembered Fiona's words. She must have been joking. Alice whispered, trying to calm herself down. Diane hasn't lived here that long. How would Fiona know what kind of person she was if they hadn't interacted much? Finding no answer to her question, she sighed heavily and whipped up the feather pillows and headed for the kitchen. A tired Diana and Maddie collapsed on the couch, and a few minutes later were sound asleep. Alice sat in the kitchen and listened to the silence, broken only by the sounds coming from the street. It was dawning outside the window. The birds were singing. The neighbor's rooster was crowing. It was time to run to manage, but there was no strength for it. Alex still hadn't come back, and Alice was uneasy with the unknown. A few minutes later, the long-awaited creak of the front door was heard, and Alex came into the house. "Oh, I'll get some clean clothes." Alice started to rush out, but then she came to her senses. "Did you put it out?" Fiona's house was defended, and that's good, and she didn't believe it till the last. "I brought Diana and Maddie here. They can stay here for a while, if you don't mind." "I wouldn't even ask. Let them stay." "Good." Alex sighed with relief. She didn't know how Alex would treat strangers, especially since they could stay in their house for a long time. "I'm going to get some clothes. Wait, Alice." Alex smiled tiredly. "I'll wash first. I smell like that." "There is no hot water. It is not warmed. I didn't even think about it." "I don't care, just as long as I rinse off." Shaking her head, Alice rushed to warm the water, and when Alex, having hardly washed himself, came into the house, she started to set the table again. She was so tired that she could hardly keep on her feet and started to talk incessantly. "You should lie down and rest. I can do it myself," Alex said tiredly. "I'm fine. I fed the cattle, milked the cow, but I haven't cleaned it yet. A little later. Soon the children will wake up." "You should have waited for me," he said reproachfully. "Don't tell me you're going to start getting ready for work now." "No," Alice smiled. "I'll skip a day." "You should. You shouldn't drive in such a state. It's a long way to the district center. Do you feel sorry for the car or for me? Alice put her arms at her sides and looked at her husband seriously, but unable to withstand his amazement, jumped with laughter. That's why I married you, he said suddenly. You never lose heart. And about the car, we will talk to you, Alice. I am very interested. Why suddenly you decided that a pile of iron is more important than my wife? At that moment there were footsteps in the corridor and Jenny came out from the corner. Not yet fully awake, the 8-year-old daughter stared at her mother in amazement. You're not going to work today. Not today. Diana Stone's house was on fire last night and we stayed up. Daddy helped put it out. Alice hesitated, then added quickly. Aunt Diana and Maddie are staying with us for a while. They're in the big room now sleeping. Where's the fire? Archie shouted, running into the kitchen. Quiet, Alice shouted at him. The guests are asleep in the big room. Archie opened his eyes wide and looked at his sister incomprehensibly. He had not long ago turned 5, so he was curious enough. Anticipating a steady stream of questions from her son, Alice quickly sent him to wash up. Mom, Jenny said, sitting down at the table. How long are they staying? I don't know yet, Alice said. That Maddie is so strange. I think she's a wonderful girl, always friendly. Jenny grimaced and reluctantly picked up a spoonful of porridge. She's always teasing, saying all sorts of things. You'll have to make a truce, said Alice, spreading butter on bread. The Stones will stay with us until the housing issue is resolved. Jenny looked hopefully at her tired father, but found no support in his eyes and sighed heavily. Alice opened her eyes and looked around confused, not realizing where she was or what time it was. She went over the events of the previous night in her mind and, remembering Diana, quickly jumped to her feet. 5 o'clock. Is that evening or morning? Alice muttered as she opened the curtains. Outside the window, the neighbor's chickens scampered about, and in the distance she could see the place where the Stones' modest wooden house had stood yesterday, the memory of which sent a chill down Alice's spine. The only thing she feared more than anything else in the world was fire, remembering her fear and numbness as a small and fragile girl who had come face to face with it. Alice suddenly realized that she hadn't done her chores, hadn't watered the tomatoes in the greenhouse, which were probably already wilted, and hadn't done anything else during the day. She strode quickly to the door leading into the hallway, and opening it, almost collided with Maddie. The girl drew back in surprise. Sorry, dear. Alice apologized. Is Mommy up yet? A long time ago, Maddie smiled. Good, where is she now? In the garden, helping Uncle Alex. Maddie looked at Alice with her sky-blue eyes, then suddenly added, You have so many colors. It's so beautiful. Thank you, Alice mumbled, looking out the window at the garden. We do have a lot of flowers. Where are Archie and Jenny? In the room, watching cartoons. I don't like those. You go play, I'll go and do the chores. After stroking Diana's daughter's head, Alice went out into the hall and changed into street clothes. She hurried along the narrow path, surrounded by various flowers, to the cowshed and listened intensely, trying to find her husband. Everything is simple here, Alex was saying loudly to someone. Alice stopped abruptly. At that moment, Diana's quiet voice was heard. I have currants endlessly sick, with everything not sprayed, so I'll take note. Thank you. Oh, Alice, exclaimed her husband and waved his hand from behind the bushes. I thought you were asleep. Alice shook off her stupor and then walked over to her husband and Diana, who for some reason was dressed in men's shorts and an oversized t-shirt. I woke up. I remembered that I did not water the tomatoes and the management. Alice began, looking at the guest. Don't worry. I did everything. Alex waved away. By the way, I didn't dare to look for clothes for guests and your things, so I took what was at hand, from my own. And from Maddie? Alex laughed, and Diana could barely keep from laughing. Jenny gave her her own. Okay, Alice replied, blushing. I'll go make dinner then. She looked at Diana expectantly, and after thanking Alex again, she went into the house. Thank you again, Diana started to say when they reached the porch. Let's use the word you. Diana nodded contentedly. Do you need help with dinner? I'm not much use in the garden, but I can pull weeds or cook. Okay, Alice said. She was surprised to see that Diana wasn't as quiet as she thought she was. She looked much younger than her years, and she and Alice were about the same age, without the big round glasses and the faded blouse she wore to work. When Alice entered the house, she showed her guests what was where and went to the nursery. Archie was watching a cartoon, and Jenny was drawing something in her sketchbook. When her daughter saw her mom, she said, "Maddie thinks we're stupid." "Why would you say that?" "She said so," Jenny whispered. "Mom, will they be leaving soon?" Alice put her finger to her lips and quickly closed the door behind her. "It's rude to ask such things. They don't have a home at all. I told you that while they are staying with us." "Then I won't talk to her." "Suit yourself," Alice sighed. "Me neither," Archie blurted out and went back to watching the cartoon. "Okay, I'm gonna go cook. You guys turn off the TV and go outside. Help your father." Archie wanted to whine, but Alice looked at him so sternly that he immediately jumped off the bed and turned off the cartoons. "Run along. Otherwise, in a month it will already be fall, and there will be no more warmth." After taking the children outside, Alice returned to the kitchen, where she spent an hour in the company of Diana. The guest was not very talkative, but it was so until Alice went underground for pickles and Alex entered the house. At his sight, Diana, as if came to life, and from a silent woman left without a roof over her head, turned into a cheerful one. The whole evening Alice kept her eyes on her guest, and when it was time to go to bed, she couldn't sleep. "Can't sleep?" Alex asked, when his wife once again turned over from side to side. The moon was shining through the glass, throwing fanciful reflections. The room was fresh, and probably all the inhabitants of this small house had been asleep for a long time. Alice looked absent-mindedly at her husband and whispered, "How do you like our guests?" "Yes, normally. Why?" "I don't know." "Alice, now that you've started, tell me what's going on." "The kids and Maddie had a falling out. They said they wouldn't be friends with her." "That's what you mean," Alex smiled. "Today they quarrel, tomorrow they'll make up. They're the same way among themselves." "And Diana, what do you think of her?" Alice blurted out and fell silent. "What do you mean?" "I think she smiles too much." "Do you? Are you jealous?" "No." Alex hugged her tightly and whispered, "Yes, you are. Don't you dare. You're my wife, and Diana is just our guest. A quiet, smiling woman. That's all." In the morning, Alice opened her eyes and, not finding her husband in bed, quickly rose to her feet. The house was quiet. Dawn was breaking outside the window. Quietly stepping on the homespun doormats, Alice looked into the kitchen and smiled. Alex was stirring porridge in a pot, yawning and stretching. "You're early today," she whispered. "I wanted to get everything done before you woke up." Alex smiled and kissed Alice on the cheek. "Do you want coffee?" Alice nodded and looked at her husband. "What?" He was surprised. "Just admiring." "At me? I haven't even washed my face. I got up and went straight to the kitchen. Or are you talking about yesterday again? About our guest?" "No, let's forget it. I'm still impressed. I don't remember you being jealous of anyone. Or have you?" Alice quickly opened the refrigerator and, taking out a can of milk, began to carefully pour it into the mug with coffee. Her cheeks were covered with a thick blush, and her hands trembled slightly with excitement. "Have you never been jealous of me?" "Every day." Alex laughed, and then added seriously, "You have nothing to worry about. Besides, Diana and Maddie won't stay with us long. They must have relatives, right?" "That's the thing, they don't." "No one at all?" Fiona said they had nowhere to go. But Diana's mother lives in the neighborhood, but they don't know each other. Turning off the porridge and covering it with the lid, Alex put his arm around Alice and said quietly, "Mom will never leave her daughter and granddaughter in trouble, right? So don't worry, talk to Diana. I think it will be resolved soon," he smiled. "I'm going to go wash up and get to work." Having had breakfast alone, Alice began to get ready for work. She worked at the biggest company in town as an accountant. Of course, the pay for such work was not so much, but a stable salary and a cozy workplace in a warm office was for the inhabitants of a small town a good option. After getting ready, Alice quickly put on makeup and got into her small car, bought on hand a few years ago. On the way to work, Alice had the annoying thought that soon Diana would wake up and she and Alex would be home alone, not counting the kids. Of course, Alex was also working, mowing hay with the local men, raising cattle, and all this required a huge amount of time and effort. But even so, Alice could not push the bad thoughts away. "How jealous I am," she said angrily, looking at the road. "I must control myself. We have children, a common house, a household. Alex loves me." Alice fell silent and then sighed heavily. The sun, slowly rising above the horizon, was blinding. It was still cool outside, and the fresh air flowing into the car through the ajar window allowed Alice to wake up finally. In the distance finally showed a small wooden houses, which meant that in a few minutes she would enter the factory building and only 8 hours later she could go home. Her colleagues greeted Alice with joy, especially Anna, her close friend, with whom they had worked together for over 10 years. "Good morning," Anna exclaimed, looking away from the mirror. "Good morning. Are you making yourself pretty?" Alice replied, sitting down at the table. "Of course, I can't do my makeup at home. I don't want to waste time. I'd rather sleep longer. Well, tell me, where were you yesterday?" It had been a long time since I had taken some time off. Alice told her friend about everything that had happened to her the previous day and, of course, shared her concerns. "You invited this Diana to your place?" Anna gasped. "A stranger?" "Anna. She lives nearby, and yes, I just couldn't pass by. You're just like always." Anna shook her head and, powdering her nose, put her makeup away in the bottom drawer of her desk. "If that lady is looking at Alex, and he's a man of substance, send her away." "I can't. They've got nowhere to go." "Oh, come on," Anna blurted out. Her gray-green eyes stared at her friend, and her blue-black curls lay in disorder on her shoulders. Anna was 2 years older than her colleague and had celebrated her 40th birthday last spring. She had a great deal of intelligence, prudence, and beauty, so she had a lot of admirers, most of whom hoped for a long and serious relationship. But all of them had nothing to do but to be satisfied with little, because Anna did not want to commit herself, and for good reason. "We must get rid of them," Anna continued. "Guests are guests, but it's too much to keep them here indefinitely. It's not for nothing that your neighbor Fiona warned you, is it? Talk to her. I think she might have some interesting things to say if you ask her. I was going to drop by Fiona's today anyway. I hope she's not mad at me. The sooner that Diana moves out, the better. I don't know what's going on." Alice smiled. "You know, even if she's imagining things, Alex doesn't care." "Are you sure?" Anna snorted, pulling the papers out of the folder. "A man will be faithful if you're around and if he really loves you. But when you're not, he can, and that's not our case." Alice interrupted her. Anna pressed her lips together and began to go through the sheets, and then, as if she couldn't stand the pause, she added, "There are other ways. I should know." That was the end of the conversation. Anna began to tell something on distracted topics, apparently trying to avoid a quarrel or misunderstanding. In the evening, when the working day was over, Alice bought a small sponge cake for tea and decided to go to Fiona's house, to apologize for her abruptness and to find out what she knew about the Stone family, who all these 3 years had lived in isolation. "Fiona!" Alice shouted, opening the gate and entering the yard. "Hello? Who's there?" A familiar voice sounded from afar. "I'm already running." "Froska, you've overturned the trough again. What's the matter with you?" "You take your time. It's Alice." From a large wooden building located at the end of the vegetable garden, a piglet squealing and a loud voice of Fiona, who, to all appearances, was arguing with the pig Frozia. After a couple of minutes she came outside and, adjusting the kerchief on her head, strode toward the house. "Alice, that's who I didn't expect to see." The landlady splashed her hands. "What's the matter?" "Oh, nothing much. I just thought I'd drop by for tea, if I may." Alice smiled slightly and handed her neighbor a bag of biscuits. Fiona stared at her neighbor's face for a couple of seconds, as if she were thinking about something, and then she said, "I think I know what you wanted to talk about. Let's go home." The small 2-room wooden house was cool and smelled of geraniums, which decorated the tiny window sills like bright lights. In the annex that served as Fiona's kitchen was a large stove, and in the corner, over a table covered with a white tablecloth, hung icons. "Sit by the window," Fiona asked. "It's a place of honor for guests. The chair is freshly painted, freshly made, and I knitted the bedding for it. Do you like it?" "Very nice," praised Alice and settled down on the offered place. The hostess put an old enamel kettle on the fire, and then, placing saucers and cups on the table, sat opposite. While we're waiting for the boiling water, you can tell me about it, though it's all clear to me." Alice raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Diana, right? How did you? I've known her since she was born." "But Diane has only lived here for 3 years," Alice reminded her. Fiona grinned and shook her head. Her light blue eyes, framed by sparse, short lashes, looked at her neighbor curiously. "Her mother, Betty, and I went to school together. We were thick as thieves. Then life divorced. I was here with my husband, and Betty was wandering around the north with her man. Then when she wised up and got divorced, she returned to her native village, where she lives now." "Wow. Oh, yeah. Well, tell me what Diana's done now that you're here." Fiona took the boiling kettle off the fire, and having poured boiling water into the cups, began to cut a rich biscuit decorated with buttercream. Alice carefully began to tell about what had happened at home. She did not want to offend Fiona, because Diana was her friend's daughter. After outlining what had happened, she asked, "Why doesn't Diana ask her mother for help? They don't know each other." "Good." Fiona blurted out and sighed heavily, noticing the bewilderment on her guest's face. "Okay, if you're with the cake and apologies, then listen. I will start from afar, or you will not understand. Betty was born into a simple country family and always dreamed of a better life. But on her own misfortune, being in love and frivolous girl, got involved with one of the local guys, and after a couple of months came to her mother with a confession. Betty, how could you bring it in your hem? Shame on the whole village. What did you find in it?" Clapped her hands. The next morning, Bee's parents went to the house of her lover and thus decided the fate of their daughter. The wedding was simple. The belly was not yet visible. And in the spring, a charming daughter, Elizabeth, appeared in the young family. Frank did not want to work or study. The family was a burden to him, but under pressure from his parents decided that it would be better to go somewhere far away. Betty took the news of his imminent move to a small northern town in a huff. She tried to talk her husband out of it, but he was adamant. 10 years. For 10 years, she put up with her neglectful husband, and then she decided to run away. After gathering the bare necessities of life, Betty struggled to get to her home, and her mother took her in. And then a week later, she suddenly discovered that she had brought from her husband a gift that was to be born also next spring. The girl who was not expected, Diana, was born. She was 10 years younger than her older sister and so demanding, so lively and mischievous, that Betty said with a smile, "She'll grow up to be a joy to me. She'll be a helper." And Diana grew up, except that did not live up to Betty's expectations. The girl's helper did not turn out. Unlike her older sister, who was for her mother like a wand, Diana grew up capricious and very lazy. She did not want to study, never milked the cow, and from any business found skillful excuses. "You shouldn't spoil her." Fiona shook her head when she visited her home village and listened to her friend's lamentations. "You should send her away. Let her help and go to school after the 9th grade. There's no problem with that nowadays. She doesn't want to, you know." Betty sighed. "I'm telling you, and it's as if I'm talking to a wall. Elizabeth graduated from the institute, the first in our family with an education, but Diana says, 'Why should I study?' She's going to marry a rich man. No offense, but who needs such a lazy girl? I can see it myself. Mister. Send her to a college, a technical school, anywhere. There's still a year before she graduates to get her grades up." But no matter how hard Betty tried to talk some sense into Diana, she failed. Her daughter somehow finished 9 grades and, having received a certificate, got a job cleaning floors in a kindergarten. They pay pennies, but even them Diana managed to squander only after receiving. And then she rounded up the husband of one of the teachers and jumped out to marry him. Betty, after such a scandal, a few weeks did not show on the street, so she was ashamed to catch the stares of acquaintances. However, marital happiness was short-lived, and soon Diana was again going to marry Louis, who was married and, in addition, had 2 children. Betty's patience was breaking. She tried to reason with her daughter, but Diana wouldn't listen to her. Soon after she and Louis signed, Betty decided to tell her daughter that she would no longer cover her debts and give her money. However, the heart-to-heart talk ended with the fact that the agitated mother had to be rushed to the hospital, and during her time there Diana never visited her. The eldest daughter, Elizabeth, came from the metropolis. She took time off work and nursed her mother until she was better. At that moment, Betty realized that she couldn't go on like this, and when she returned home, she sent her youngest daughter away. Fiona felt silent, then added with a sigh, "They haven't spoken to each other since." Good. Betty was like a human being. She didn't have to save her younger daughter, support her, and also pay debts to the neighbors. And yet so quiet, modest, muttered Alice. And how did she get a job in the library without education? Fiona blurted out, and breaking off a small piece of biscuit with a teaspoon, sent it into her mouth. "Do you know how to do debts?" Fiona grinned. "Our Victor, the hen of the village council, is a fox. And Diana, she's not bad. She's got a fine figure, gorgeous hair, and she knows how to get her own way. But Victor's over 60. Alice blurted out and faltered. "When you live to our years, you will realize that despite the number in the passport, still feel like 18. Fiona smiled dreamily, then sipped her tea and added, "The attention alone is enough for him. He's married, after all, and Angela's got her eyes on him." "I see," Alice muttered. "But what should I do?" "Go to Victor and ask him to give Diana a place to live, at least a room in our 2-story building. Almost half of the apartments there are empty. Water is there or not, heating is the same story. Though knowing Diana, I would have thought she'd have already made arrangements for free accommodation." Fiona looked thoughtfully at her guest and muttered, "That's odd. You keep an eye on Alex. Don't let anything happen." Alice shook her head and pushed the empty teacup away from her. "That's out of the question. Since you came here, you must be worried," the neighbor said quickly. "And rightly so. Straws everywhere cannot be laid, but do not let your marriage on the sidelines too." "Thank you." "You're welcome. I wish you'd listened to me in the first place," Fiona sighed. Alice nodded. Only now she realized what she had done. She had willingly brought a stranger into the house who was not who she thought she was. Alice always tried to help people, empathize, and now these feelings played a cruel joke on her. Having promised to bring Fiona cottage cheese and milk, Alice said goodbye to her, got into the car, and drove home. The sun was already setting, and the cows were returning to the village from the field. They mooed long and walked reluctantly to their own gates. When Alice parked the car near the house, she was surprised to see Pestryanka chewing grass and wagging her tail angrily. "And you, why are you not at home?" Alice asked in surprise, opening the gate in front of the cow. "Come to the place." Having escorted the fugitive to the stall, Alice walked along the path leading to the house, without noticing a single living soul, entered the hay. "Mama," shouted Archie, jumping out to meet her. "You've been gone so long, and Dasha and I drew you a present. Only it's a secret." Alice smiled and patted her son's curly dark hair. "Great, where's Daddy?" "He's with Aunt Diana." "What's wrong?" Alice was worried. Instead of answering, Archie started giggling about a cartoon character and pulled Alice into the house. In the kitchen, she noticed Diana. The guest was sitting at a large round table, covered with a blue tablecloth, and laughing. But when she saw her hostess, she immediately changed her face. "Good evening," she said dryly and smiled strangely. "Hello, Diana. How was your day?" "Good." Alex came out of the kitchen with cups of hot tea. "Hi, where have you been so long?" he asked. "I was late at work, and then I stopped by Fiona's house to see if she was all right. The last time I saw her was the night of the fire, and she was very frightened." Alice looked meaningfully at the pale Diana. "Warn me next time. I called you. Apparently, someone had turned off the sound on the phone again, Alex noticed. Diana had a headache. I did all the work and decided to make her some herbal tea. "Is that all?" Alice grinned. "When I parked the car, Pestrel was bored in front of the house." "Really?" The husband gasped. "She came by. I remember exactly." Or Alex looked at his wife confusedly, trying to remember the events of the previous evening. "It's nothing," Diana said with a smile. "Thank you, Alex. The tea is so fragrant." "You're welcome." Alice frowned and hurried out of the kitchen, so as not to say anything unnecessary. She wanted so much to tell her husband about everything she had learned from Fiona. However, Alice realized that she shouldn't do that. We need to proceed with caution. Who knows what plans this Diana has? Alice thought as she went to change. In the evening, when Alex went to the bath, Alice looked into the big room and smiled. "Diana, not busy?" "No," replied the guest. "Come in." "I wanted to talk about what happened the other night," Alice began. She sat down on the edge of the couch and looked at Diana with as much sympathy as she could muster. I'm embarrassed to ask, but how did the fire happen? I don't know. I woke up, I grabbed Maddie's hand, and I went out the window. You've been through a lot with her. Yeah, Diana nodded, but it's all behind us now. We should check with the head of the village council about housing. Victor will always help, and there are empty houses. I'll visit him one of these days. Well, let's go to bed. Maddie's tired for the day. Realizing that the conversation for today is over and Diana no longer wants to discuss the residential issue, Alice wished them and her daughter good night and went to her room. A few minutes later, Alex returned from the bath. He threw a wet towel on the back of a chair and smiled. Nice bath. Alex playfully looked at his wife, who didn't react to his words. Alice sat on the sofa and looked at one point. What are you thinking about? Aya? You didn't even notice that I threw a wet towel. It's nothing. Oh, tell me what's wrong or I won't recognize you. Nothing. Alice. Alex stretched out, taking a seat across from her. Sighing, she brushed her tightly braided hair off her shoulder and whispered, Diana doesn't seem like she's going to settle on a place to live. In fact, she's taking her time. It's been so little time, she probably hasn't gotten over it yet. Really? That's why she was giggling at dinner. Alice sneered. What do you suggest? Not to chase them out into the street, and there are no options yet. Alice smiled enigmatically and dropped her head onto the pillow. I'll find my own options tomorrow, she said dryly and closed her eyes. You'll see. That morning Alice got up earlier than usual so that she could stop by the village council and talk to Victor. Where are you going like that? Alex asked in surprise when he saw his wife near the mirror. In a flowing dress to the knees, with a deep neckline, Alice looked gorgeous. Her dark hair was scattered over her shoulders, cherry lipstick emphasized her lips, and her green eyes with brown speckles were full of determination. To the village council, I'm going to go knock out housing for the burned-out people. Maybe you should wear something more modest, Alex whispered. Jealous? Of course I am. Alice grinned. You're right. A wife should be appreciated. I don't get it. He wanted to ask something, but Alice quickly went out into the hall. Alex rushed after her and stopped her at the door, not letting her go. What's the hint? Let's talk before you leave the house. I'm in a hurry. And about appreciating your wife. Am I wrong? Of course you're right, but... Alex, I have to get to the village hall and then I have to get to work. Oh, by the way, Diana's going to the library today too. So you're staying home to take charge and the kids will be with you for the time being. Kindergarten doesn't open for 2 weeks and you know what school is like. But she said she would be home for another week. What? Alice was amazed. I thought you knew. Well, Diana. Alice jumped out of the house and clutched her purse with such force that a little more would have left nail marks on it. She reached the one-story wooden building where the village council was located in a matter of minutes and was happy to find that Victor was already there. The small room, lit by the bright July sun, was stuffy and very dusty. The bulky wooden desk near the window could hardly hold the piles of papers and various books, and the closet opposite was full of documents. What was lacking here was a woman's hand, capable of turning an ugly room without curtains into a cozy workplace. But Victor considered his office to be his personal territory and would not allow his wife, Angela, to organize it under any pretext. Good morning, Alice. He said hello. What are you doing here at this early hour? Good morning. I wanted to talk to you about Diana. She is now living with my daughter. Victor coughed, and then offering his visitor a seat, muttered, Well, that's even better. Tell Diana that the investigation is dragging on. It's unpleasant, but that's the way it is. Alice looked at the head of the village council in confusion and did not immediately realize what he was talking about. I mean the investigation into the cause of the fire, he coughed. As I was told, the case has become more complicated and more time is needed. They seem to suspect arson. Is that possible? Everyone here is an insider. Victor leaned back in his wooden chair and sighed. I don't know what to think. It's a pity for Louis. He's lost his home. It was a big house, but... Wait a minute, it's Diana's house. No, it was Lou's mother's house. He inherited it before he married Diana. Louis did what a real man would do. He let his wife and daughter live here and left. Not everyone could do that. Victor fell silent and then apologized a lot. I keep saying, what did you want to ask, Alice? From confusion, Alice did not immediately realize why she had come, but taking control of herself finally decided. Diana and her daughter have nowhere to go. I've heard that we have a lot of empty houses, so maybe. Of course, I'd be happy to put a roof over their heads. It's just that Diana hadn't contacted me and I thought she'd already found a place to stay. She has, but they can't stay with us. A guest is not home, you know. Victor smiled contentedly and, hardly taking his eyes off Alice's brightly colored dress, muttered, "Tell Diana to come to me tomorrow morning. We'll solve all the issues and we'll help with the move. We have good, helpful people." "Thank you," Alice blurted out. "Thank you for brightening my morning," Victor smiled. After saying goodbye to the head of the village council, she rushed to work. Anna, having heard the latest news, just splashed her hands. What a surprise! And this Diana, I see it is not bad, and compared to her, Luz no longer seems a bad man. That's just it, Alice sighed, fixing her wavy strands. I didn't even realize she was living in her ex-husband's house, and Fiona had mentioned it. Maybe she forgot or didn't want to. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that they're leaving soon. You should know how tired I am. It's only been a couple of days, and I feel like this merry family has been living with us for a year. Anna smirked and struggled not to say anything. What about Alex? Is she still acting too clingy? Not in front of me. But I don't know what happens when I'm at work, Alice admitted. I'm also really stressed about her time off. I mean, she was going to work today, saying she couldn't stay home anymore. And now, it's like Diana's taking an unpaid vacation. But why? Didn't you realize? Anna asked cautiously. No, don't tell me. Anna waved her hands and remained silent. Alex doesn't see anything. Alice blurted out and began to wave her notebook around. He says that Diana is worried. It's hard for her. Empathizing with a stranger is a red flag. We started out the same way. And you know what happened next? Alice covered her face with her hands. She knew what Anna was implying, of course, but she didn't want to believe that the same thing could happen in her life. 10 years ago, Anna was happily married and had a long-awaited daughter. It seemed that all good things were just beginning. The baby was growing fast and becoming more and more interesting every day. Anna was busy at home, and her husband, Max, was moving up the ladder and had recently been promoted. But one cold winter morning turned Ola's life upside down. She found out that Max was having an affair. Anna expected anything from her husband, an apology, a new lie, but the husband only nodded silently, packed his things and left home, saying that finally met his love. When Anna learned that Max had fallen in love with her cousin Anna, she decided to quit serious relationships once and for all. She was afraid to fall in love, trusted no one else, and kept a decent distance. When I went on maternity leave, my friend was dumped by her boyfriend, Anna said quietly. I consoled her, often invited her to visit us, and was glad that she was getting better after talking to us. My daughter did not sleep well, and I remember that time in fragments. Perhaps because of sleep deprivation and fatigue, I didn't notice how she and Max sang together. Alice looked at Anna in all eyes and did not know what to say. Her friend did not like to remember this story, and even now, after so many years, tears came to her eyes. We are no longer in touch. I don't have a cousin anymore. But I trusted her, thought she was the best, shared my secrets. She even knew about all of our arguments with Max. Can you imagine what I did? Anna stopped talking and quickly added, don't let strangers into your life, even if they seem kind and sensitive, even if they help and support you. If you don't want to be in my shoes. Wasn't she ashamed? I don't know. The only good thing is that he left her with a baby in her arms, so I guess you could say we're even. A chill ran down Alice's spine. She looked at the saddened face of the bail bondsman and realized that Anna, unfortunately, quite right. July was unusually hot, and the rain that the locals had been waiting for had not fallen for more than 3 weeks. The car was stifling, and the wind blowing through the hot streets was no relief. Parking the car near her house, Alice noticed her daughter sitting on the bench. Hi, how was your day? Alice asked. Jenny looked sadly at her mom and said hello quietly. Hi, it was okay. I guess not everything is. Tell me what's wrong, Alice commanded, sitting down on the hot bench. Did your father scold you? No. Jenny. I don't like Aunt Diana. I don't like Maddie either. Why? They're complaining about me to Daddy. Maddie broke a cup today, and I'm the last one standing. Daddy banned me from watching TV for 2 days. When are they leaving, Mom? Soon, Alice sighed and hugged Jenny. I'll talk to Dad so he doesn't get mad, okay? Uh-huh. Come on, cheer up. You're fine, you're working. I'm here all day. Soon it'll start. Alice smiled. Archie will be off to daycare and you'll be back at school. The unit school? Yes. Come home. Let's drink tea with chocolate gingerbread. I stopped by the store. I know how much you love them. Alice took her daughter's hand and they walked slowly home. Archie was very happy to see his mother back, and that's why he was talking about the past day without stopping. Maddie was smiling happily too, but not at Alice, but at the big pile of gingerbread. Diana was as reserved as ever and seemed to be puzzled about something. At the table she was silent most of the time and answered questions with one-word answers or just shrugged her shoulders. Alice waited with difficulty until the children had gone into the room, and then she said, as if in passing, I stopped by Victor today. He said hello to everyone and promised to look for a place for Diana. Such a helpful man. How great! Alex was happy and looked at the day's guest. Diana, you will have a roof over your head. I should have turned to him at once. I didn't even think about it. Alice was good. Alice smiled and curiously followed the guest, who, judging by the sour expression on her face, was not happy about the news. Victor told me to come to him tomorrow morning, Alice continued. He promised to organize everything and even to solve the question of moving. Thanks, I'll go, Diana mumbled and began to stir the sugar in her tea. By the way, I almost forgot. He also said something about an investigation. It seemed to be dragging on indefinitely. Diana almost knocked over her cup of tea and now stared at Alice, unable to answer. Investigation? Alex was surprised. What kind of investigation? After the fire, they conduct an examination to find out the cause, shrugged Alice. You never know. Well, it's all clear here. Alex dismissed it. The wiring was no good. It's good that everyone is safe. Victor said that it could have been arson, stretching the words Alice said. Nonsense, Diana blurted out. Who would think of harming a simple librarian? I didn't run across anyone's path. I didn't borrow money. What about Louis? You think Louis did it? Alex asked incredulously. Alice hummed and stared at her guest absent-mindedly. The house was his. It was unlikely that Louis would burn his inheritance. Diana jumped to her feet so quickly that the chair she was sitting on fell to the floor with a clatter. Her cheeks were flaming, and her dark chocolate-colored eyes stared at the lady of the house. You're not an investigator. They'll figure it out for themselves, and there's no need to look for someone to blame. Alice didn't say anything like that. Alex stood up for his wife. But Diana wouldn't listen to him. She stepped over the chair on the floor and went into the big room, slamming the door loudly against the jamb. You shouldn't have done that, Alex whispered. They miraculously got out of the house. Don't you think that, Diana? I don't think anything, Alice said calmly and got up from the table. You should think less about Diana and more about your family. Alice, I can't wait for them to move in. Alex, open your eyes for God's sake. She's not who she says she is. What are you talking about? We'll put the kids to bed and I'll tell you everything. Without further ado, whispered Alice, glancing at the door of the big room. The house was quiet. Alex and Alice sat on the sofa and were silent. Finally, he couldn't stand it. Are you sure Fiona was telling the truth? That's not like Diana at all. She's so quiet. Alice snorted. Yeah, a quiet person. So you think she likes me? Alice shrugged. She was sitting on the edge of the couch in the long nightgown Alex had given her last March 8th. There was no makeup on her face, and her long dark hair was braided as usual. Alex looked at her and thought about something. You are as beautiful as you were when we first met. I loved you without makeup and hair, sleep-deprived and angry happy, and I love you now. You are the same Alice for whom I was ready to do anything. He was silent, watching his wife's eyes fill with tears. Do you really think that I would change you, the one who all these years took care of me and supported me, for some strange woman? He looked reproachfully at Alice, and then moved to her and pressed her against him. Alice sobbed and shook with sobs. She was so ashamed. but for some reason she felt incredibly good. Alex had never said anything like that before. Of course, Alice knew that her husband loved her, but he had never been a fan of loud words and believed that actions were much more important. When Alice was sick, Alex took all the household chores and treated her. When she was sad, listened and cheered her up. "I'm sorry," she exhaled, not letting him out of her embrace. "You're welcome." Alex quietly pulled away and added, "You know, Diana's behavior does seem a little strange, but I was always looking for excuses for her. When she is with you, she is silent most of the time, but when she is alone with me, she is babbling and trying to send the guys away. You're right, it's time for them to go out. But how do we get her to? Victor will find them a place to live, and then we'll move them out in no time." "I hope so," Alice sighed, "but I'll have to run around to make sure it happens as soon as possible." They got into bed and turned off the light. Alex was silent for a minute and then suddenly asked, "Do you think the fire was her fault?" "I don't know, but I'd like to believe she had nothing to do with it." "Why?" "I feel sorry for Maggie, and that would be too much, even for Diana." "Diana!" shouted Alice, knocking at the guest's room. "It's time to go." "Where to?" Diana asked, yawning, not opening her eyes. "To the head of the village council." "I'll go later." Alice opened the door to the big room and, seeing the sleepy face of her guest, said, "Get ready. I'll drive you." She said it in such a tone that Diana dared not interfere. With a grunt and a groan, she rose to her feet and went to wash her face. And Matey, hearing the noise, asked fearfully, "Where is Mommy? Is it still night?" "It's morning. It's just the curtains are too thick. Your mom and I are going to run some errands, and then she'll come home." "Go get some rest. It's still a long way from breakfast." Smiling, Maddie collapsed into the pillows and stretched sweetly. She looked like such a sweet and fragile little girl that Alice instantly felt guilty. She was embarrassed by her actions. It was one thing to kick a grown woman out of the house and quite another to kick a child out. Calming herself with the fact that Diana could handle all the problems on her own, Alice closed the door behind her and went into the kitchen. "What's wrong?" "You're not wearing your face," Alex said in a low voice. He was sitting at the table and drinking coffee, trying to finally wake up. "You know, I'm so ashamed." "I realize it's nothing, but still," whispered Alice. "I was taught from childhood to help people. And now what? I'd do anything to get them to move out. There's a reason for that. If Diana were, say, Fiona, you'd stick with her to the end." Alice smiled. Fiona would have bargained Victor for a place to live by morning, wouldn't want to embarrass anyone. I don't even doubt it. "Are you kidding?" "Tell me about it. I'll laugh for the company," Diana said, entering the kitchen. She sat down at the table and looked at Alice with undisguised irritation. "Did you really think that I cannot go to the village council by myself?" asked the guest. "Or am I so annoying? Just say the word and we'll leave." Alex opened his mouth in surprise and, noticing the confusion on his wife's face, said conciliatingly, "We're just worried about you and Marty. There's not much time left before the cold weather. What if the house turns out to be bad? We'll have to insulate, prepare." "All right," Diana said and smiled. "I'm really sorry to embarrass you, but I'm even glad I did. Alice, you're the most loyal friend." "Me?" Alice squeaked. Yes, Diana continued. "I haven't had a single friend since we've lived in this village. It just didn't work out. They're jealous. I don't know. It's true what they say. A friend is a friend in need. So you helped me." Diana smiled sweetly, and Alex quickly left the table and went to the fridge for bread, so as not to laugh. "Thank you," was all Alex could say. "Well, have breakfast and let's go. I still have to go to work. By the way, will you stay home again today?" "Yes, I'll stay till the end of the week. I'll help Alex with the housekeeping and the kids. I don't know how he manages on his own." "That's a good husband you've got there, Alice." Alice nodded quickly and went to wait for her newfound friend outside. The coolness and freshness of the early morning made her stop on the porch. The sun was rising behind the woods, the clouds were blushing, and the morning fog, flowing like a weightless blanket, made it a fairy tale. Alice slowly descended the wooden steps and, throwing off her sandals, walked on the wet grass, which still showed tiny drops of dew. Her feet felt cool, but at the same time so good. Breathing in the incomparable aroma of freshness of this morning, Alice tried to remember it well, so that later, on cold winter evenings, she could remember this short, but so sweet summer. She struggled to put on her shoes and get into the car. Diana was still gone, and Alice thought with sadness that she was busy all the time and lived without noticing anything around her. She hadn't admired the sunrise for a long time, and she couldn't remember the last time she and Alexei had walked under the setting sun, holding hands. It seemed that life was passing by, and she was still spinning in one place and had no time for anything. Suddenly, Alice noticed Diana in the rearview mirror. "Let's go." Diane jumped up and down on the seat. "I hope they'll give us a decent house. I don't want to live in a leaky shack." Victor promised to find a suitable place. If he promised, it'll be fine. Alice glanced at the passenger in the short summer dress, sighed heavily, and pressed the gas pedal. When they pulled up outside the village hall, Victor had just gotten to work. When he saw the visitors, he smiled. "Good morning, I'm late today." "Good morning, Victor," Diana chirped, fixing her hair. "We're early." Alice couldn't sleep. I see. Well, come in." Once in the stuffy office, Alice sat down on an empty chair and asked impatiently, "Did you find any accommodation for Diana and Marty?" "Yes," nodded the head of the village council. "There are two options. A one-room apartment in our two-story building or a house across the river. You can move into the room. There is a good repair and some furniture, but the house is not so simple." "What kind of house?" Diana was interested. "Maria Robajkina. It suits me." "Wait," shook her head Alice. "Maria hasn't lived in the village for 2 years at least. The house must be in shambles, and there must be a lot of repairs." "It does need repairs," Victor grudgingly agreed. "That's why I would recommend the apartment." Diana jumped up from her chair and said, "We'll do the repairs. And I don't want to go into a two-story building. There will be no problems with it. Come on, Alice, let's go." "Diane, don't make a rash decision. Think it over carefully," Victor began. "And by the way, be home tonight. They wanted to talk to you about the fire." "Who?" Diana recoiled. "The investigator, apparently. Something's going on over there." Without saying anything, Diana quickly left the office. "Everything okay in there?" Victor asked cautiously. She seemed nervous. She didn't sleep well. "Thank you for your help," Alice blurted out and left. When she went outside, she saw Diana sitting on a rock nearby. Her expression was pensive and her eyes were fixed on one point. "Worried about the investigation?" "No," Diana answered quickly, thinking about the repairs. "It's not going to happen. It takes money and time to rebuild Maria's house. Take the apartment. It's better than nothing. We'll see." "Diana, you have to take it." "Are you kicking me out?" "No, I just don't see the point in turning your nose up at it," Alice sneered. "You're in the wrong position. Of course, we could throw out all options and move in with your mom. She lives in the neighboring village, doesn't she?" "How do you know?" Diana gasped. "One of the neighbors mentioned it, a long time ago. She doesn't have room for us. The house is tiny." "I'll manage without her help," Diana said. "You drive to work, I'll walk." "What about the apartment?" "Let's get an apartment. I don't care anymore." Without saying goodbye, she quickly walked away. When she got to work, Alice told Anna what had happened. "That's how Diana is." Anna shook her head. "Let her move into an apartment and be happy that she was offered a place to live at all. You, I think, will run ahead of her with boxes, just so that her favorite friend quickly celebrated the housewarming." "You say the same thing," sighed Alice. "I can't get over that fire." "Do you think she burned down the house? But even if she did, why? If you hadn't called her to your house, she and her daughter would have been left on the street. Diana has no friends, and her relatives have cut her out of their lives. What good would that do?" "If I knew, I have to stop by Fiona's house today. I promised her some cottage cheese and milk, so I'll ask her what's going on with the house." Anna nodded and smiled. "Hopefully by Monday, the freeloaders will have moved out and you'll finally be as happy as you were before." When the workday was over, Alice arrived home and wanted to go straight to Fiona's house, but everything went wrong. Alex was in the big room reading the book to the children, and Diana was nowhere to be seen. "Hi," Alice said. "Hello." "Mommy." Archie was happy and rushed into her arms. "How was your day?" she asked, looking at the pensive expression on Alex's face. "Dashenka, please finish the chapter, and I'll pour tea for Mommy." Giving the book to her daughter, Alex took Alice's hand and led her to the kitchen. I need to take the cottage cheese to Fiona. Alice started. Diana is in the district center. Why? She's suspected of arson. The coroner came to see her. I didn't even think it was her. Did she confess? Alice recoiled. No, but you should have seen her face. It was unbelievable. She was there with Marty, and if they hadn't run out in time, I don't understand anything. Alex sat down at the table and stared at Alice. I shouldn't have believed you. Maybe Diana wasn't involved. I don't know for sure. Alice said in a low voice. What would happen to Marty if she did? Marty thinks Mom's away on business, so we'll just have to keep a straight face. You go to Fiona's like you wanted, and I'll watch the kids. I don't know if Diana's coming back tonight. Alice was so dumbfounded by what was happening that she didn't remember to put the cottage cheese in a bag and prepared a can of milk and ran outside. It took her a couple of minutes to get to Fiona. The local resident was sitting on the porch in the shade of dark green leaves of wild grapes and was looking through a magazine. When she saw Alice, she took off her glasses and smiled. Good evening, Alice. What are you doing here? Hello, Fiona. I promised to bring some cottage cheese and milk. Alice put the bag on the wooden step and asked quietly, why didn't you tell me about the fact that Diana had nothing to do with the house she lived in? Didn't I tell you? Fiona was surprised. What a sclerosis. I'm doing crossword puzzles, practicing my memory, but I guess it's no use. Come in, we'll have tea, and I'll explain everything. I'm in a hurry. Alex is alone with the kids, and I've got a lot of work to do. Alone? Where's Diana? The investigator came today. Alice sighed and told her neighbor what had happened. When she heard that Diana was suspected of arson, Fiona covered her mouth with her hand and rounded her eyes. I warned her. Warned her about what? Alice didn't understand. Fiona looked around worriedly, then put the magazine aside and motioned for Alice to sit down on the step. The older woman pondered for a moment, then said, Louis is a good man. His mother Selena and I were friends, but she left early. She was very ill. I think you remember her. She was a kind woman, kind-hearted. Louis then lived in the city and just started dating his first wife, Catherine, when Selena was gone. Catherine at that time was full of admirers, beautiful, educated, and in addition the daughter of one of the local businessmen. She stood out strikingly against the background of others. However, as her parents did not dissuade her parents to marry a country boy, Catherine did not listen to them. At first everything went well, and she and Louis lived soul to soul. But when the youngest child was 2 years old, Louis filed for divorce. For Catherine, this news was a blow. She loved her husband very much and up to the last believed that he would come to his senses. But Louis, in love with Diana, without regret trampled all the light that was in his life and left, leaving his wife with 2 children. Louis brought Diana to his mother's house, Fiona continued. He renovated the house, planted a vegetable garden, and made it so organized that we were amazed. Diana became pregnant and soon Mady was born. I was really happy for Diana. But a year later, Louis suddenly left and never came back. He left his wife and daughter a house, though they lived in it on birds' rights. But still, Fiona got quiet and suddenly added, a month ago, Louis showed up and told Diana he was going to sell the house. What? Alice gasped. He needed money, either for a car or to buy a place somewhere else. Anyway, it didn't matter. When Diana found out, she came running to me. She asked me to change his mind. Fiona grinned. He respects me, and of course he'll listen to me. I told her to find a place to live. Is it a good idea to pry into someone else's life and talk a grown man out of selling his own house? And she didn't listen, muttered Alice, looking away. Fiona said, they came to see me the other day too. They asked about Diana, what kind of person she is, what her relationship with her ex-husband is. I honestly didn't believe Diane would do such a thing. To be outraged and make a scene is her style, but to start a fire. Fiona put the Scrabble magazine on her lap and smoothed the page. She was beyond upset, and she wasn't even trying to hide it. What? Am I going to tell her mother? Fiona suddenly asked. Even though they don't know each other, Betty is still worried. She even asked me to keep an eye on her daughter. Let's hope it's the wiring, Alice muttered. She glanced at her watch and realized, I'm sorry, I have to go home. Call me when Diana gets back from the district center. Otherwise, I won't sleep until I know everything is all right. I will. Goodbye, Fiona. Leaving the grocery bag on the porch, Alice ran to the gate. She tried to keep her head down so as not to upset Fiona, who didn't seem to be angry with Diana anymore, but was genuinely worried about her. The sun was setting, and in the field in the middle of the village 2 stray cows were plucking grass, unwilling to go home. The warm west wind was blowing in her face. The hay smelled pleasant, and it was so good that she didn't want to hurry anywhere. After passing the neighbors' houses, Alice came to her home gate and pulled the handle of the gate, hoping that Diana had already returned. "Alice, are you?" Alex shouted, waving his hand at her from the side of the vegetable garden. "The guys and I are managing." Alice hurried to her husband. "Where is Diana?" Alex shrugged his shoulders and looked at Maddie, who was diligently raking the scattered hay into a pile. "We decided to do it together," the husband said, as if nothing had happened. "Maddie tried milking the cow, and Archie wanted fresh milk and bread. I had to send the girls out for mugs and loaves." "Have you never milked?" Alice asked thoughtfully. Maddie smiled and, shaking her head, informed. "We didn't have a cow, just chickens." "Okay, Alex, I need to call her." Alice nodded and headed for the porch, but no matter how many times she dialed Diana's number, a monotonous female voice answered her that the caller was temporarily unavailable. When it was time to go to bed, Diana never showed up. With a heavy heart, Alice put Maddie to rest and sat and waited until she fell into a restless sleep. Alice did not dare to call Fiona and upset her even more. Alice woke up to a sharp noise. Sitting up in bed, she looked at her husband sleeping next to her and thought at first that she had imagined it. However, after a couple of seconds, voices were heard outside the window. Alice jumped to her feet and carefully pulled back the curtain. There was a car on the road, and Diana and a man standing near it. They exchanged a few words, and Diana hurried to the house. "Alex, wake up," whispered Alice, trying to wake up her husband. "What is it?" "Diana is here." Alex instantly opened his eyes. "Diana, what time is it?" "It's still night. Get up." Alex pulled on his shorts and they left the room. There was a scraping sound from the hay. Apparently, Diana was trying to get into the house. "Why are you locking yourself in?" Diana asked angrily as Alice turned the key in the keyhole and let her in. The house is on the outskirts of the city. In the dim light of the lamp, Diana seemed exhausted and very tense. With trembling hands, she took off her shoes and wanted to go to her room, but Alice stopped her. "Will you explain what's going on? You've been gone all evening. We were worried." "It's nothing. I'll pack my things and we'll go." To the apartment? Alex didn't understand. Nothing is ready there, and it's strange to start moving in the middle of the night. Diana gave him a displeased look and sneered. "I'm going to my mother's. You wanted to get rid of me as soon as possible, so here you are, and don't worry about your things. There's a car waiting for me and Maddie at the house." "Who are you here with?" "A friend." "Well, I don't have time to talk. I'm going to go pack up Maddie." "Why don't we wait till morning?" Alice suggested and asked. "What did the investigator tell you?" "Nothing. I'm in a hurry." Not wanting to talk anymore, Diana went into the big room. She said something to Maddie, shouting at her for her sluggishness, and Alice froze in place, not knowing how to understand such behavior. Alex was the first to wake up. "This sounds like an escape. But what's the point?" Alice whispered. "She and her mother do not communicate, which means that Diana lied to us and will not go to her. And who's the friend in the car? Where did he come from?" "I don't know. One thing I can tell you for sure, it's not Louis." At that moment, a disheveled Diane burst out of the great room. She was holding a travel bag in one hand and clutching her daughter's hand in the other. Maddie was yawning desperately and squinting against the bright light. "Mom, where are we going?" "I want to sleep." "You can sleep later." "Diana," Alice exclaimed, "your departure has something to do with the visit to the investigator." With flashing eyes, Diana sent her daughter to the hayloft, and then closing the door behind her, whispered, "If it did, then what? So the wiring had nothing to do with it?" Alice recoiled. "Why did you do it?" "Louis abandoned me, swapped me for someone else, and left me penniless. If you knew what it cost me to get a job as a librarian in this remote village with no education. The only thing he left us was his mother's house. He promised to give it to Maddie." Diana's eyes filled with tears. "And now he's changed his mind and told us to find another place to live." Do you think I regret what I did? No, not at all. She jumped out into the hay, and in a minute dazed Alex and Alice heard the roar of a car leaving. Alice, someone's here to see you. Not realizing where she was and what time it was, Alice struggled to open her eyelids and saw Alex in front of her. Fiona's here, he continued. She's in such a state that if I were you, I'd get up, and quickly. She wouldn't even take tea. It's about Diana, Alice moaned as she struggled to sit up in bed. I promised to call when Diana comes back from the investigator. It's going to be a fun conversation, I imagine. Should I stay, or should I go back to the police station? Alice sent her husband outside and began frantically dressing. Not knowing how to behave or what to say, she walked into the kitchen and stopped, noticing the stern look of her neighbor. Fiona drummed her fingers on the table and her expression didn't bode well. You promised. How hard is it to call? Diana's gone. I know. You said she was in the district center, but now though. She came back tonight, quickly packed her things and left again with her daughter. Alice said confusedly, sitting down opposite, said as if she was going to her mother's house. Fiona looked at Alice with all her eyes and didn't know what to say. They couldn't have gone to Betty's, she said quietly. But why would she go anywhere at all when we were going to prepare a 2-story apartment for them today? Sighing heavily, Alice told her neighbor about Diana's confession of arson. Unthinkable, Fiona muttered, clutching her hands to her head. She's going to be found. Doesn't she realize that? What do we do now, Alice? For starters, let's have some tea and calm down. Diana's a grown woman and wants what's best for her daughter, so she'll try to make sure nothing happens to Maddie. Maybe she really did go to her mom's. Where's your cell phone? I'll call Betty. It's on the nightstand by the door. The neighbor jumped up from her seat and, finding the receiver, began to dial the number she knew by heart. There was silence, broken only by faint beeps. Betty, it's Fiona. Fiona hasn't come to see you. The neighbor began and immediately fell silent. No way, but... Alice looked at the older woman's worried face in surprise and forgot how to breathe. Of course. You do not worry. If necessary, I will come, Fiona continued to say into the phone. Goodbye, dear. Putting the phone back down, she turned around and blurted out, Maddie's at Bethy's. Diana had gotten her mother up in the middle of the night and told her she would keep her granddaughter for a couple days and then come back. Betty couldn't say no. So they had made up. Alice gasped. I don't know. But Betty said it was all right. She'd never seen Maddie before. Where's that naughty girl gone to? Where's that? Fiona asked angrily. It had been exactly 1 week since Diana had left the Carpots' house that fateful night. Maddie was still at her grandmother's house, waiting for her mother, who never showed up. They started from scratch. Betty was incredibly happy, and Maddie was just glad that she had such a kind and sympathetic grandmother. Never before had the girl eaten such delicious pies, never listened to so many interesting stories, and never knew that the ordinary word grandmother can mean so much. That morning, as usual, Alice went to work. But as she got into the car, she suddenly noticed a familiar figure hurrying toward their house. Fiona waved at her, beckoning her to wait. Wait, darling. Fiona spoke up, out of breath. Did you hear what happened? No, Alice answered cautiously. What is it? Diana has been found, and she will have to answer for what she has done. I don't know what will happen now, but I'm afraid for Maddie. Lou doesn't need her because he's seeing someone else now, and Betty is old enough. Would she be willing to keep the girl, if anything? I don't know. Do you think Diane's going to be sent? Spit, Fiona interrupted her. I hope Lou will take pity on her, but who knows how it will be. She sighed heavily and added, It's a good thing she left you and didn't have time to do anything. I was worried about you and Alex. Diana will not stop at anything if money is at stake, because for the sake of them twice already went to the wedding. And that man who drove her and Maddie. Alice muttered. Who was he? Her first husband. Alice opened her mouth in surprise, and Fiona shrugged and said, I can imagine Betty's face when she saw her daughter's old friend. Maddie will stay at her grandmother's house for the time being. She'll probably go to school there too. Betty has forgiven her wayward daughter and even promised to let her live with her. She's stepping on the same rake again. But what can you do? She's her own daughter, after all. After saying goodbye, Fiona slowly wandered toward home, and Alice went to work. All the way to the district center, she could not get out of her mind the words of her neighbor and thought about Diana. Anna noticed at once that Alice was not herself and waited until there were no extra ears in the office to find out what was wrong. "I understand Betty," Anna admitted. "She's a daughter. Imagine yourself in Betty's shoes. Would you forgive her?" "Of course you would. I really hope Diana realizes how much she's loved and stops acting like a whimsical little girl." "I don't think so. People like her don't change." Anna looked at Alice carefully and, lowering her voice, said, "Be careful from now on, Alice. You don't need such friends." Alice nodded silently. She realized that she had almost ruined her family with a rash act, allowing the woman she didn't know to live in the house for an indefinite period of time. "What about Alex? He's not upset." "He is only glad that now he can walk around the house without shorts," grinned Alice, "and the kids are happy too. Jenny said that it's much calmer without guests. No one quarrels, and you can relax." "Good for you. Did you really think Alex was capable of cheating? Who knows what's on another person's mind?" Anna answered with a question to a question. "I hope for the best, that's all. But after the betrayal of my sister and my ex-husband, I hope only for myself. It's easier that way." She smiled slightly and started to work. Strong, independent, real. 6 months passed. Mady was still living with her grandmother and attending the local village school. Betty loved the girl with all her heart, and only for her sake tolerated the antics of Diana, who, in fact, got away with it, except for a fine and compulsory labor. Louis sold the lot where his family home once stood and married for the 3rd time, hoping that this marriage would be his last. He promised to help Mady with money and to take her to town periodically, but nothing more. Diane hadn't changed a bit. She worked as a janitor at the local school and searched for her happiness, believing that it lies in men. Alice celebrated another wedding anniversary with her husband. Afterwards, she swore to herself never to let strangers into the house again and broke it only once, when it was time to say goodbye to Fiona, whom she loved and cherished very much. "Are you out of your mind?" His wife also objected to him. "It's not just a child. It's my brother. How could I give him away?" "In that case, an ultimatum. Either me or him. I don't want to raise someone else's child. I married you, not your whole family." Selena slowly sank down on the sofa. She was shocked by the words of her beloved husband. Until 2 months ago, they had been a happy family, and now? She was 20 years old when she met David. Handsome, intelligent, and mature, 8 years older than her, she liked the man immediately. The romance spiraled rapidly. David and Selena dated for a year, then got married. The wedding was fabulous, as the girl had dreamed in childhood. A white dress, a beautiful veil, favorite parents near. Guys lived happily for 2 years. Children were not in a hurry to have children. Selena wanted to graduate from the institute, but 2 months ago the life of this family changed. Selena's parents died in a car accident. For the girl, it was a real shock. She could not believe in what was happening for a long time, but it was impossible for Selena to complain. She was left with a younger brother. He, of course, is not a baby. Tom is 12 years old, but he still needs support and care. No family. Selena and Tom had no family left in the whole world. Celine. That's why it was so natural for the girl that she would take her brother to her family. But her husband was of a different opinion. He did not get along well with Tom and constantly hinted to Celine that the boy should be given to an orphanage. The girl pretended not to notice the hints of her husband, but today the game in the ostrich is over. Her husband put the question as a question, and what to do, Selena did not know. It was the most difficult choice in her life, a choice without the right to make a mistake. After the hard conversation, David went to work on the night shift, and Selena looked into the room her brother now occupied. The boy was methodically putting his belongings into his backpack. "Where are you going?" the girl asked her brother. "I heard your conversation." Tom answered with a sniffle. "I don't want to go to the orphanage. I'd rather run away somewhere." "I'm not going to put in an orphanage," Selena said quietly. "You're lying." Tom shouted, "You'll choose your David, and you don't need me. I used to make fun of you when I was little." The boy was crying for real now, tears running down his childish face that he could not stop. "Tom, what are you talking about? The candy melting in the report is not the worst joke. And the perfume I broke? And the shoes I painted on purpose? Hey." Tom wanted to say something else, but Selena quickly walked over to him and hugged him. "Unpack your backpack and come to the kitchen. Now we'll have dinner, and then we can watch TV. The boy smiled and began to unpack, and Selena walked thoughtfully out of the room. She knew for sure that she would not give her brother to the orphanage. Well, how could she do that? It would be a betrayal. But at the same time, Selena didn't want to lose her husband. She really hoped that David had given her the ultimatum because he was angry, and tomorrow morning he'd come back and say he was joking, and their lives would move on. Soon Selena would graduate from the institute and go to work. Life would become easier. There would be more money. Calming herself with such thoughts, the girl cooked dinner. She and her brother ate and lay down to watch a movie. Selena did not yet know that soon her usual life would collapse. David forcefully pushed Selena towards the couch. The girl stumbled and fell on the soft cushions. It didn't hurt, but it was very upsetting. Her husband loomed over her. "Are you stupid? You decided to train me for a boy. Put him in an orphanage. Don't ruin our lives," David yelled. The girl pressed herself into the sofa. In the morning, Selena did not manage to talk to her husband. He came from the shift tired, and she had to have time to feed her brother, send him to school, and run to the institute. So the hard conversation took place now. The girl was glad Tom wasn't home. The boy should not see this. "I can't give my brother to an orphanage. It's wrong, unfair. How will I live with it later?" Selena tried to explain. "Thousands of people do nasty things and live with it, and you're so righteous, so lofty. Why do I have to feed you both? Okay, you're my wife, I chose you, I love you, but the boy is nothing to me. David, just bear with me. I'll graduate soon and get a job. I'll be able to feed Tom myself. After all, he won't eat us. I told you yesterday, it's either me or him. There are no other options." David looked at his wife. Selena looked up with tears in her eyes. "So," the girl began quietly, "I choose my brother. I'm sorry." She wanted to get up from the couch, but the man grabbed her firmly by the shoulders and began to shake her. He shouted curses. Selena dangled in the hands of the evil puppeteer like a helpless puppet. There was no telling how it would have ended, but David's phone rang. He was distracted for a second, and Selena jumped up from the couch and ran into the room that was now her brother's. Selena realized she had made the right decision. Giving her own brother to an orphanage was a true betrayal. But how they would continue to live with Tom, the girl did not imagine. She did not work. Before the defense of her diploma, she had a little more than 3 months left. After receiving the documents, the girl planned to get a job. And while she wanted to quietly finish her studies, her husband did not push Selena to work. David had a good salary, and he and Selena had enough for everything. In principle, even the presence of an extra mouth, as David called his wife's brother, did not pierce a big hole in the family budget. But Selena's husband fundamentally did not want to support the boy. It wasn't even about money. The guy just didn't want to see Tom in his house. All these thoughts wandered in her head while she monotonously packed her brother's things. Good thing they had somewhere to go. There was a 2-bedroom apartment left over from her dead parents. Selena hadn't gone in there since Mom and Dad's funeral. She hadn't even dared to sort through their things. She just packed up her brother, locked up the apartment, and left. It's been 2 months since Selena's been where she grew up and was happy. Now she and her brother have to go back to their apartment. It's so hard. Go to the place where you were once happy, where there are still things of parents, and they themselves, so dear and loved, are not around. Gathering her brother's things, the girl went to the room where she and David slept. Her husband watched carefully as Selena pulled out a suitcase and began packing. "Are you sure about what you're doing?" David asked. "Yes," Selena answered quietly. "I won't take it back, even if you come crawling back on your knees." After saying the last words, the man quickly left the room. Selena heard the front door slam. At that moment, her strength left her. The girl sobbed bitterly. Shoving her things into her suitcase, Selena went to the kitchen. With a quick movement, the girl opened the cabinet and looked at the supplies. She pulled out a couple packs of pasta and a bag of grits. Selena put her loot into a bag. It is necessary to hide it all somehow, or her husband would not let her take the food out of principle. Selena would not be surprised. David showed himself from a completely different side, and what to expect from this man, the girl now did not know. She has no money at all. What she and Tom will eat, she does not know, so pasta and buckwheat will be useful to them. Perhaps there would be some more supplies in her parents' apartment. Of course, she will try to find a job, but she can't leave the institute. Oh, how complicated it all was. The unknown frightened Selena. The girl threw a quick glance at the clock. In about 15 minutes, her brother should be back from school. That was good. Maybe they would have time to leave the apartment before David came back. She didn't want to see her husband again. Selena was tired of fighting, of figuring things out. The doorbell rang. Selena hurried into the hallway. Tom stood on the threshold. "Do not undress. We're leaving here. Your things I have collected," the girl quickly said and gave her brother a bag. "Where are we going?" The boy was surprised. "Home. David is not ready to live with you, and I'm not ready to give you up." Are you sure?" his brother muttered quietly. "Yes." Selena smiled and winked at Tom. She picked up her suitcase and looked back sadly. She had lived here for 2 years. She had been happy and loved. It was a shame it was ending like this. Selena slammed the door shut, and she and her brother walked down to the first floor. At the mailboxes, the girl slowed down. She dropped the apartment keys into one of them. That's what they had agreed with David. When they got home, he would get them out. Selena didn't need the keys anymore. She can't come back here. She's made her choice. She has no right to make a mistake. Selena and Tom walked to the bus stop with their suitcases in front of them. The girl had some change. She borrowed it from David. When he came home, he always emptied his. From her husband's apartment to his home was about 15 minutes. Selena and Tom settled down near the entrance and drove in silence. Everyone's spirits were heavy and various thoughts were wandering around in their heads. No matter how much Tom braved it, it was obvious by the way he was afraid to go back to the apartment he had lived in all his life. Afraid to face reality, to admit that mom and dad were gone. Selena was overcome with similar feelings and thoughts, and she was also thinking about David. Well, how could he do that to her? She thought she knew her husband well, but here it was. And Selena was also afraid with the responsibility she had taken on. Not only was she now responsible for her own life, but also for Tom's. Selena had never taken on such a burden before. When she lived with her parents, they protected her from all troubles, came in a difficult moment and solved all problems. Then Selena fell under the wing of her adult husband. David also tried to protect his wife from all problems. Probably that's why the man was surprised that Selena shook up, did not want to give Tom to the orphanage. Everyone thought Selena was a delicate flower, and she showed her thorns. Only how long will her fuse last? Will the first difficulties break the girl? Time will tell. The door of her parents' apartment opened with a creak. It's like opening a crypt, Selena thought. The smell of musty, dusty, uninhabited space immediately hit her nose. No surprise, Selena hadn't visited the apartment since her parents' funeral, which was a little over 2 months now. "Well, let's go in," Selena asked her brother. The boys were still tentatively stomping on the threshold. They were scared, very scared and longing. "Come on," Tom said with a childish sigh. Taking hands, brother and sister crossed the threshold of the native house. The girl quickly flicked the light switch, and a bright light filled the hallway. Mom's slippers immediately caught her eye. So flirty, pink with big pom-poms. Selena's nose pinched, and she quickly shoved the slippers under the closet, hoping Tom hadn't seen them. But the boy had seen everything. He tried to discreetly wipe away the tears that came. "Shall we go through?" Too loudly to hide his excitement, Tom asked. "Come on," Selena replied. After taking off her shoes, the girl quickly went deep into the apartment and closed the room that used to be her parents' room. 2 rooms would be enough for her and Tom, and she wasn't ready to touch her parents' bedroom. It was too heavy. Tom occupied the room in which he lived before the tragic events. Everything was in the dust there. Therefore, brother and sister began cleaning. Having put in order the rooms they would use, the guys drank tea and went to bed. Selena thought that she wouldn't be able to sleep for a long time, but fell into a dream literally in a matter of seconds. Apparently, the tension of the last few days had taken its toll. In the morning, Tom ran off to school, and Selena tried to figure out how to live her life. The first thing she had to do was to take care of all the paperwork, guardianship, and various payments. Encouraged, Selena went to the internet to find out what papers were needed to make the payments. The girl's enthusiasm quickly disappeared as soon as she saw the list of documents. But Selena had no time to be sad and afraid. She found the phone number of the guardianship authorities and called. No one answered the phone. In order not to waste time, the girl headed there. Selena was very afraid that she would be scolded. Her brother would be taken away. They would say that people like her are not given children. After all, by and large, Selena has nothing. She doesn't work, so she can't support Tom. But apparently on this day, someone upstairs took pity on the stubborn girl. In the guardianship authorities, Selena got to a beautiful woman, Anna, who explained everything in detail to her visitor. In fact, everything turned out to be not so terrible, but the first thing the girl had to do was to get a divorce. If the husband does not agree to take custody of Tom, then Selena will not be able to do it. The only way out is divorce. Another problem that the girl needed to solve as soon as possible was employment. A certificate was needed for the previous year. Hearing this, Selena almost cried. "Don't get so upset," Anna consoled the girl. "You bring a certificate that you work, and then we'll decide. There is always a loophole." Selena left the guardianship full of determination. She believed that everything will work out. The main thing was to find a job and get a divorce. All the other certificates are a matter of technique. Selena believed in success, not even realizing how many difficulties awaited her on the way. The next day, Selena called her husband. "What's up? Already want to go back again?" Chuckled into the phone guy, "And I will not accept. I warned you, didn't I?" "David, listen, I'm not going back anywhere. You kicked me out, I get it. I just wanted to ask." Selena hesitated. "So David, come with me to the registry office. I want to file for divorce. If we come together, it'll be quicker. Come on, please." "No." David shouted in a low voice. "I won't give you a divorce. I won't. And you can't get custody of your little brother. Not without my consent. You got that, bitch?" David kept yelling. Selena pressed the disconnect button, choking back bitter tears. How could she have been so wrong? How she had thought David was the best of men, and he had turned out to be a real bastard. Fighting back the flood of tears, Selena picked up her cell phone and dialed the number of her classmate Lana. She'd been moonlighting as a waitress at a cafe for a long time and said that they were always in need of female workers. Selena had always snorted, thinking that such a job wasn't right for her. But that's all changed now. "Hey Lana, it's Selena. Am I interrupting?" Selena spoke into the phone. "Hey Walker, a little distracting, but if you're quick, I'm listening." "Leek, you've said the cafe you work at always needs people. I should get a seat?" Selena mumbled, embarrassed. "Princess, is that you? How are you going to run around with trays?" Lana snorted merrily, but then became serious and said, "Is it that bad?" "Uh-huh," Selena replied, fighting back another bout of tears. "Don't be so downhearted. I'll check with Michael about the vacancies and get back to you." Yes, thank you." Selena began to thank Lana. Lana called back about an hour later. "Selena, there are no jobs at the cafe." She spoke quickly, "but don't feel bad. Do you want to try to work in the store? The place is good money. I would go myself, but there already works Madi, and I with her to work is not an option. You know I stole her boyfriend." Lana finished, sighing heavily. "Of course I want to try. I don't have a choice anyway, and I need a job." Then write down the address of the store and the phone number of the owner. Lana quickly dictated the coordinates. "Call, make an appointment. The place is a Blatten, not delay. I found out about it by accident." Okay, Selena said and hung up. The girl did not hesitate and dialed the phone number that her friend gave her. The receiver was picked up by a woman with a melodious voice. Selena quickly explained what she was calling about, and the lady made an appointment. The girl needed to arrive at the store in an hour. Arriving at the place, Selena realized that the store was not an easy one. Beautiful signboard, expensive interior, sellers in branded clothes. "Hello, where can I find Sandy?" Selena asked one of the girls working in the store. "Just a moment," she answered and ran off in the direction of the fitting rooms. Selena sat down on a low sofa and waited for the store owner. She appeared a couple minutes later. "I'm Sandy," the woman introduced herself. "And you are Selena?" "Yes," the girl answered quickly. She glared at the woman who came out to meet her. Selena didn't often get to see such beautiful and well-groomed women. "Selena, let me tell you a little about the store, and you can think about whether this place would be a good fit for you." Sandy spoke up. Selena nodded affirmatively, and the store owner continued. "This is a high-end men's clothing store. Most of the people who dress here are wealthy, so the service in our store must be top-notch. From you, as a salesman, requires politeness, the desire to please the client, the ability to smooth out conflicts. Men often come here with their wives or other halves, so no flirting, smiles, coquetry. If I see you, I'll fire you. Is that clear?" "Yes," Selena nodded. The girls work in shifts. 2 days work, 2 days rest. The salary is fixed, plus a percentage. But more on that later. If you're satisfied with everything, I'll take you on probation. If there are no complaints for a month, we'll work together. Otherwise, we'll say goodbye. Selena nodded in agreement. She liked the store very much, liked the atmosphere in it. She wanted to touch this luxury, to be a part of it. If everything is clear to you, I propose to start work tomorrow. Do you agree? Of course, Selena smiled. Then come tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning with all the documents. We will settle the necessary formalities. I will familiarize you with the assortment, the peculiarities of work. Selena left the store inspired. She believed that the new place of work, a new turn in her life. Selena was quickly drawn into the new regime. Now she had not only to prepare for the defense of her diploma, but also to go to work, to take care of Tom, to draw up documents. The guys didn't have any money, so Selena took on debts. At least her friends didn't refuse her. The first 2 working days went great. Selena listened attentively to Sandy, trying to remember everything, not to confuse anything. The shopkeeper noticed the girl's efforts and she liked it. As soon as Selena had a day off, she went to file for divorce. How long will it take? The girl asked the clerk. If there are no children and the husband agrees, then everything will be quick. A month and the divorce. And if the husband is against it? Selena asked fearfully. The case may take longer, said the registry clerk. But Selena was lucky. David went somewhere and did not show up on the appointed day. They quickly divorced. The guys had no children, disputes over property too. Everything went well, which Selena could not help but rejoice. Having received the certificate of divorce, the girl hurriedly collected other necessary documents for custody. Things were progressing slowly but surely. With work too, everything worked out splendidly. Selena passed her probationary period. The girl liked the work, although she was very tired. Clients sometimes came across very capricious and demanding. Some could be rude, others slapped on the ass and with an unpleasant laugh to say, "Move faster." We had to endure. Sometimes it was very hard, especially for the proud Celine, who was not used to such treatment. But she endured, not for her own sake, for Tom's sake. The boy was growing up and wanted new clothes, gadgets, normal food, not empty pasta, which the guys were eating for the first month. By the way, Tom was not capricious. He appreciated his sister's efforts and helped as much as he could. They had been living together, but the uninvited guests had disrupted their routine. That day, Selena lay on the couch, trying to get away from 2 hard days of work. The store had a new shipment of merchandise, and there was a surprisingly large number of people. Selena was exhausted, not only mentally but also physically, so she needed to rest. Tom ran off to practice and Selena dozed off. Her peace was broken by the insistent ringing of the doorbell. "Oh, Tom, you little shit. Did he forget his keys again?" Getting out from under the plate, Selena muttered, heading for the door. She was sure that her brother was trying to get into the apartment, so she opened the door without even looking through the peephole. "Tom, why are you at my—" Selena couldn't finish. The words stuck in her throat. It wasn't Tom standing on the doorstep. It was David, her ex-husband. "You?" the girl said quietly, looking at the man with all her eyes. "I am." David grinned evilly and entered the apartment, quickly slamming the door shut. "And what are you doing here?" Fighting with surprise, Selena asked. "I came to visit you, my favorite wife," David said, and then only the girl caught a strong smell of alcohol coming from her ex-husband. Selena became frightened. She did not know how David could behave under the influence of alcohol. Selena didn't know what to expect from this man at all. "David, what do you want? We've made up our minds, haven't we?" "You kicked me out," the girl said, fighting panic. "You left on your own. You chose your dear brother over me. You should have done as I asked and we'd be happy now. Why don't you come back? You haven't done the paperwork yet, have you?" "I have," Selena answered quietly. She wasn't lying. A few days ago, she had finally finished the paperwork. "You miss me, don't you?" David murmured, grabbing Selena's hand. Selena tried to pull the lint away, but she couldn't. "So, do you miss me?" repeated David's question. "No," Selena said quietly. "I don't have time to be bored. I have work, school, things to do." "And I miss you," the guy said angrily and pounced on Selena with his whole body. Pushing his ex-wife against the wall, David tried to kiss her. The girl resisted, but could not cope with a strong man. David's hand slid down Selena's body. The girl tried to pull away, to break free, but her resistance only irritated the man. "Stay still, or it will be worse," David growled. "Let me go, please," whispered Selena, realizing what her ex-husband was going to do to her. "No, darling, I want to punish you for your disobedience and actually enjoy myself." Selena was numbed by the words of her once favored man. Gathering all the strength in her fist, the girl pushed David away from her and rushed into the room. But she couldn't run far. The man grabbed her by her robe and threw her to the floor. In such a paladavide, Selena was powerless and could not offer proper resistance. That's what David needed. Looking at his ex-wife with superiority, he took her by force. Selena screamed in pain, begging for David to let her go, but it was as if the man didn't hear. Having done his dirty work, he pulled up his pants and, spitting vigorously on the floor, left Selena's apartment, saying goodbye. "Now we're even." Selena sat on the floor in the hallway with her arms around her knees and cried quietly. She couldn't believe David could do this to her, to abuse her in such a dirty and despicable way. She didn't know what to do. The first thought that arose in the girl's mind was to go to the police. But Selena was scared. She was afraid not for herself, but mostly for her brother. "Suddenly David will do something to Tom," Selena reasoned, "because he already doesn't like my brother." It is not known how long Selena would have sat on the floor, but at some point she heard a key turn in the door. Tom had come in. The girl didn't want her brother to see her like this, so she quickly got up and skulked into the bathtub. Opening the warm water, Selena frantically rubbed herself with a washcloth, trying to wash away the pain and dirt that lodged deep in her soul. Of course, the water didn't help her come to terms with the situation, but it calmed her nerves a bit, and soon Selena was out of the bathroom, wrapped in a large bathrobe. "Hey!" shouted Tom from the kitchen. "What are you doing in the bathroom? Let's drink tea." "Come on," replied the girl and hurried over to her brother. Selena didn't want tea, but she felt the urgent need to be with someone. No, she wasn't going to tell her brother about what had happened, but his chatter, his stories about training, guys in school, distracted Selena from sad thoughts. The girl ordered herself not to think about what had happened, just not to think. Nothing could be changed, which meant she just had to get over it and move on. Making a decision not to think and not thinking about problems are actually things completely different. All night, Selena rolled around in bed like a hot frying pan. Unwanted memories kept popping up in her head, making her heart clench with pain. Selena didn't just think about what David had done. For some reason, she remembered the good times she had with her ex-husband. That made it even more painful. It was only in the morning that Selena, completely devastated, fell into a troubled sleep. She dreamed as if she were flying into a deep abyss, trying to cling with her hands, but she couldn't do anything as she was flying. She was going down, somewhere scary and dangerous. Selena woke up to her own screaming. She quickly sat up in bed and shook her head. "Selena, are you all right?" Tom asked in a shaky voice somewhere very close. The girl shuddered fearfully. She had been so caught up in her emotions after the dream that she hadn't noticed Tom standing beside the bed. "It's okay. Just a bad dream," Selena muttered. "And why are you here?" "You were screaming so much that I got scared and came running," the boy answered quietly. "Sorry." Looking guiltily at his brother, said Selena, "Go get some sleep. It's still an hour before rising." Tom obediently trotted barefoot to his room, and Selena flopped down on her pillow. The pillowcase was damp. Seeing in her sleep, Selena not only screamed but cried. The dream was no more. The girl silently gazed into the semi-darkness of the room, trying to calm herself. Soon the alarm clock rang, and Selena hurried to the kitchen. She had to prepare breakfast for Tom. After sending her brother to school, she lay down to rest and fell asleep. She was awakened by the phone vibrating nearby. There was a message. Selena quickly opened it. "I'm sorry," read the girl on the screen. "You miss me, don't you?" David murmured, grabbing Selena's hand. Selena tried to pull the lint away, but she couldn't. "So, do you miss me?" repeated David's question. "No," Selena said quietly. "I don't have time to be bored. I have work, school, things to do." "And I miss you," the guy said angrily and pounced on Selena with his whole body. Pushing his ex-wife against the wall, David tried to kiss her. The girl resisted, but could not cope with a strong man. David's hand slid down Selena's body. The girl tried to pull away, to break free, but her resistance only irritated the man. "Stay still, or it will be worse," David growled. "Let me go, please," whispered Selena, realizing what her ex-husband was going to do to her. "No, darling, I want to punish you for your disobedience and actually enjoy myself." Selena was numbed by the words of her once favored man. Gathering all the strength in her fist, the girl pushed David away from her and rushed into the room. But she couldn't run far. The man grabbed her by her robe and threw her to the floor. In such a Paladavide, Selena was powerless and could not offer proper resistance. That's what David needed. Looking at his ex-wife with superiority, he took her by force. Selena screamed in pain, begging for David to let her go, but it was as if the man didn't hear. Having done his dirty work, he pulled up his pants and, spitting vigorously on the floor, left Selena's apartment, saying goodbye. "Now we're even." Selena sat on the floor in the hallway with her arms around her knees and cried quietly. She couldn't believe David could do this to her, to abuse her in such a dirty and despicable way. She didn't know what to do. The first thought that arose in the girl's mind was to go to the police. But Selena was scared. She was afraid not for herself, but mostly for her brother. Suddenly, David will do something to Tom, Selena reasoned, because he already doesn't like my brother. It is not known how long Selena would have sat on the floor, but at some point she heard a key turn in the door. Tom had come in. The girl didn't want her brother to see her like this, so she quickly got up and skulked into the bathtub. Opening the warm water, Selena frantically rubbed herself with a washcloth, trying to wash away the pain and dirt that lodged deep in her soul. Of course, the water didn't help her come to terms with the situation, but it calmed her nerves a bit, and soon Selena was out of the bathroom, wrapped in a large bathrobe. "Hey!" shouted Tom from the kitchen. "What are you doing in the bathroom? Let's drink tea." "Come on," replied the girl and hurried over to her brother. Selena didn't want tea, but she felt the urgent need to be with someone. No, she wasn't going to tell her brother about what had happened, but his chatter, his stories about training, guys in school, distracted Selena from sad thoughts. The girl ordered herself not to think about what had happened, just not to think. Nothing could be changed, which meant she just had to get over it and move on. Making a decision not to think and not thinking about problems are actually things completely different. All night, Selena rolled around in bed like a hot frying pan. Unwanted memories kept popping up in her head, making her heart clench with pain. Selena didn't just think about what David had done. For some reason, she remembered the good times she had with her ex-husband. That made it even more painful. It was only in the morning that Selena, completely devastated, fell into a troubled sleep. She dreamed as if she were flying into a deep abyss, trying to cling with her hands, but she couldn't do anything as she was flying. She was going down, somewhere scary and dangerous. Selena woke up to her own screaming. She quickly sat up in bed and shook her head. "Selena, are you all right?" Tom asked in a shaky voice somewhere very close. The girl shuddered fearfully. She had been so caught up in her emotions after the dream that she hadn't noticed Tom standing beside the bed. "It's okay, just a bad dream," Selena muttered. "And why are you here?" "You were screaming so much that I got scared and came running," the boy answered quietly. "Sorry," looking guiltily at his brother, said Selena. "Go get some sleep. It's still an hour before rising." Tom obediently trotted barefoot to his room, and Selena flopped down on her pillow. The pillowcase was damp. Seeing in her sleep, Selena not only screamed but cried. The dream was no more. The girl silently gazed into the semi-darkness of the room, trying to calm herself. Soon the alarm clock rang, and Selena hurried to the kitchen. She had to prepare breakfast for Tom. After sending her brother to school, she lay down to rest and fell asleep. She was awakened by the phone vibrating nearby. There was a message. Selena quickly opened it. "I'm sorry," read the girl on the screen. Selena shook her head, wiped her eyes, and sat back down to read the message again. "I'm sorry," Selena said out loud. She looked at the sender's name once more. There was no mistake. The message had been sent by David. The girl silently put the phone away and looked up at the ceiling. "I'm sorry," she said out loud once more. "Dan, he's got it so easy. I'm sorry." Selena was getting really hysterical. She screamed, cried, ran around the room, throwing pillows, chairs, clothes, whatever she could get her hands on. Then, exhausted, she sank to the bed. Her head felt empty. Her heart felt empty too. As if through absorbent cotton, Selena heard her phone vibrate again. It was another message from David. The girl didn't open it. But apparently this day her ex-husband decided to test Selena's strength, because 9 minutes later, the phone started ringing. "What do you want?" Yelled into the phone Selena. "You have not said and done everything. Are you going to finish me off?" Choking on her tears, the girl yelled. "Selena, don't scream, listen." David babbled on the other end of the wire. His voice lacked yesterday's insolence and aggression, but Selena didn't let him finish. "I don't want to listen. I don't want to hear it. I heard and saw everything yesterday." "Go to hell," she muttered, hitting the disconnect button. The despair that had covered Selena before was replaced by anger, annoyance, rage. She didn't understand how a man could call her so easily to ask for forgiveness after all he had done. It was as if he'd stepped on her foot in transit, honestly. Putting the phone aside, Selena hurried to the bathroom. She needed to clean herself up, calm down, and clean up her room. She had made a terrible mess, and she didn't want Tom to see it. There was no need to get the boy involved in any of this trouble. By the time her brother arrived, Selena had managed to put the apartment in relative order, but the girl's mind was troubled. She was afraid that David would not leave her so easily. What her ex-husband wanted, Selena did not understand. After everything that had happened, the girl thought it was pointless to have any conversations. Selena was also worried about Tom. Tomorrow is Saturday. The girl has to go to work, and on Sunday she works, and her brother is left to himself. No, Tom is a good, bright boy, but what if her ex-husband decides to come to visit again? Selena doesn't know what that man has in mind. If David did that to her, the girl he loved, what can he do to the boy he can't stand? Selena tried not to think about that. But then the front door slammed, and Selena hurried to greet her brother. "Hi," the girl said, looking at Tom. "Hi," replied the boy. "Selena, can I go to Archie's cottage for the weekend? His parents are calling me to visit." "Of course you can, but I'll call Archie's parents first," Selena said. Selena was overjoyed that Tom had been invited to visit. She knew the family well, and now she didn't have to worry that her brother would be home alone on the weekend. Selena called her classmates' parents, and they said that they were going to go to the cottage in the evening, so at 8 o'clock they would pick up Tom. The girl helped her brother to pack for the trip, and after seeing him off, decided that it would be good to take a shower and go to bed early. But from water procedures, Selena was distracted by the beeping of the phone. The device reported that it was low on battery. The girl took the phone in her hands and was surprised to realize that there were a lot of missed calls from David and a large number of messages. She wasn't going to call back, but she opened a couple of messages. In them, her ex-husband asked for forgiveness and demanded that Selena talk to him. Shaking her head dejectedly, she put her phone on the charger and went to take a shower. Selena barely had time to get out of the shower when she heard the insistent ringing of the doorbell. The girl went to the door, but did not hurry to unlock it, guessing that there was an intruder, a person she did not want to see. "Who is it?" Selena asked, taking in more air into her lungs. "It's me," David answered from behind the door. "And why did you come?" "What do you want?" the girl still asked through the door. "Selena, open up." "Well, not through the door to communicate," said her ex-husband in an unhappy voice. "And we have nothing to talk about. Go away." Trying to cope with the growing panic, said Selena. Her hands were shaking, and her heart was beating so hard that it seemed to be about to jump out of her chest. "Selena, don't be stupid. Open up. Don't be afraid. I won't do anything bad. I want to talk. I want to apologize." "Don't apologize. Just go away." "I won't leave," David said stubbornly. "I'll still get you to open the door. We need to talk. Open up." "We? Who's we?" Selena shouted through the closed door. "I don't want anything, nothing. Just go away, or I'll call the police." The girl finished her speech. "You won't," said David. "You don't know me well," Selena mumbled. "David, go away. I don't need a fight. I have to work tomorrow. Let me rest." Selena fell silent, listening to what was going on in the stairwell. It was suspiciously quiet. The girl looked through the peephole. Her ex-husband stood opposite the door with a frown, and then, as if sensing Selena's gaze, said, "I'm going to leave now, or we'll have to talk, for better or worse, but there will be a talk." Having said these words, David left, and Selena sank to the floor exhaustively. She was glad that Tom was not at home, that her brother had not seen the concert, but the girl realized that her ex-husband would not leave so easily. In the morning, Selena woke up broken, terrible circles under the eyes, brokenness in the whole body. The girl seemed to have slept through the night, but heavy thoughts, constantly wandering in her head, did not allow normal rest. Turning in bed, Selena tried to think of a way to convey to her ex-husband that she did not want to communicate with him, see him, and in general, to have anything in common. Maybe really, to write a statement to the police. Selena reasoned, but what will I say? Husband demands a conversation, and I'm afraid it's silly. They'll only laugh at me. Having thought of nothing useful, the girl went to work, deep down hoping that David would leave her alone. But her hopes crumbled like a house of cards. Selena had no time to work in 2 hours, as the phone began to burst with calls from her ex-husband. At the 10th call, the girl could not stand it and quickly went to the back room. Good thing that there were no visitors in the store at that moment. "What do you want?" After picking up the phone, Selena asked. "To talk," answered David. "Well, about what? What do you want? I don't want anything from you, and I'm not sorry to see you. Leave me alone." "Why are you so stubborn? I've been asking you for days, but you're as stubborn as a sheep. If you don't want to talk normally, I'll make you crawl to me on your knees," David said angrily into the receiver and disconnected the phone. These words really scared Selena. She could no longer cope with the tension. The girl's nerves gave up, and she cried bitterly, sitting in the back room at work. A couple minutes later, one of Selena's co-workers, Maria, entered the room. The girls weren't really friends. They just talked about work, nothing more. "Selena, what are you doing here?" "Delilah is cursing. The landlady will be here soon to clean up." But the girl stopped when she saw that Selena was crying. "Hey, what's wrong?" Maria asked, worried. "Nothing," choking on her tears, Selena said. "Don't lie. I'm certainly not your girlfriend, but you can tell me what happened. I'll keep quiet. I might even give you some advice." Selena looked at Maria with tearful eyes and unexpectedly told her story. All of it, without embellishment and secrecy. "How did you not see such a jerk right away?" Maria asked in surprise. "I don't know, he seemed normal." Selena shrugged her shoulders. "What came out is what came out. Only how to be now, I do not know." "Don't be sad. I have an idea, but I'll tell you about it later. Now wash up and let's go to the hall, or Delilah's gonna rat us out to the landlady and tell her we're not working." "Listen, I think you need to go somewhere," improving the moment, whispered in Selena's ear Maria. "No, of course you can try to go to the police, say that your ex-husband is stalking you. But I'm not sure that would help. It's better to leave." "That's a good plan," Selena grinned sadly. "You're forgetting that I have no one but my brother. Maybe I'd run away, but I can't leave Tom. So that plan doesn't work for me," Selena finished quietly. "So you don't mind leaving?" Maria asked. "I don't mind, but only with Tom. My grandmother lives in my village," Maria said quickly. "She has a big house and a farm. I could call her and ask her to take you in. I'm sure my grandmother would agree. She won't take any money for your stay, but she'll have to help with the garden and the chickens. What do you think?" "I don't even know," Selena mumbled, uncomfortable as it is. "Moreover, I have work, Tom has school, and what to live on in the village. You can forget about the inconvenience. Grandma will be happy to take you in. She lives alone. Grandfather died a long time ago. Parents go to her rarely, and I too. Grandma does not want to go to the city to us. She still has a lot of strength, but it's true that she is a bit bored alone. So you'll be a great company for her. So it's up to you. With school, I think you can handle it. It's less than a week away. Work is a problem, of course, but it's up to you. Anyway, think about it." "Okay, thank you," Selena said. "Girls, are you going to talk all day today?" Delilah, the eldest of the shift, looked at Maria and Selena unhappily. Let's go," the chattering girls replied in one voice and hurried towards the man who had entered the store. Celine performed her duties on automatic and thought about Maria's assumption. On the one hand, leaving for the countryside was a wonderful solution. David would calm down and forget about Selena. But on the other hand, to leave everything and go to an unknown place, the girl did not want to. She liked working in the store, liked the team, and the salary pleased. To lose all this, Selena was afraid. The working day came to an end, and the girl leisurely wandered home, enjoying the good weather. But Selena's mood soured when she approached the house. On a bench near the entrance sat David. The girl wanted to turn around and leave the yard, but it was pointless to do so. David had already seen her and came up to meet her. "Stop, there is no point in running away," David said loudly when he saw that Selena wanted to turn around and leave the yard. Selena stopped and sighed heavily. She didn't feel like talking to her ex-husband, but she wasn't afraid. It was light outside, neighbors were walking around, young mothers were walking with their children on the playground nearby. It was unlikely that with so many people David would allow himself too much. "What did you want? I told you I don't want to talk to you." "Selena, listen to me. I wanted to apologize for my behavior. I was wrong." "I'm sorry," David spoke without looking at the girl. "But it's your own fault. You broke our family. You could have given the boy to an orphanage and—" Selena interrupted David abruptly. "We've already discussed this. Why are you starting this again? You kicked me out. I left. What else?" "Come back," David said quietly. "What?" Selena's mouth dropped open at the sound of it. "Come back. I can't do this without you. I was wrong." "Are you out of your mind?" Selena asked angrily. "Maybe I could come back to you. But after what you did, I don't even want to know you. You're a horrible person. And the only thing that surprises me is how I didn't see your gut before." David's eyes flashed with evil fire at those words, and he grabbed Selena's hand and whispered, "You shouldn't do that. You better come back to me while I'm calling nicely, or else." David didn't have time to finish. Selena sharply pulled out her hand and ran to the entrance, from which at that time the neighbor came out. The door behind the girl slammed shut. David stayed on the other side. But Selena didn't relax. She quickly climbed the stairs to her floor, unlocked the apartment door, went inside and locked all the locks. Only then was Selena able to exhale. "And still have to run," the girl thought. "David won't get away from me just like that. I'm afraid of him. I'm afraid he might hurt me or my brother. So we have to hide. There's no choice. Let's go to Archie Maria's grandmother's village." Selena tossed and turned in bed all night, and by morning, she was even more convinced that going to the village to Maria's grandmother was the only right decision. But for that, she had to settle the current affairs. Leaving the entrance, the girl turned around several times, afraid that David was lurking somewhere. But her ex-husband was not around. This reassured Selena a little. She hoped that she and Tom would be able to leave in peace. Selena went to work with a heavy heart. She really hated to quit, but she had no choice. Sandy, of course, was not delighted that Selena decided to leave. The woman was satisfied with the girl's work, but she did not hinder. Pauline even made concessions to Selena, allowing her not to work for 2 weeks. When everything was solved with the work, Selena thought about how to be with school. The end of the school year was just a little bit away, and the girl hoped that the teachers would make concessions, allowing the boy to go to the village earlier. True, Tom himself, who had returned from a friend's cottage, was not thrilled at the prospect of spending 3 months in the village. "Selena," whined the boy, "well, what will I do there? No internet, no friends. Probably there and the TV does not work." "That's great," Selena said in a fake cheerful voice. "You'll enjoy nature and Miley will carry water to the vegetable garden." Selena wasn't happy about the prospect, but she didn't see any other way out. David had already called Selena several times, and she realized that her ex-husband wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, but with the school too, everything was solved successfully. It turned out that all the grades were already posted, and the children attended classes more and more for pro forma. So having agreed with the school principal that Tom would not attend any more classes this year, Selena hurried home. She quickly packed her things in her travel bag and helped her brother pack. Selena hoped that they would soon be able to return home to a familiar life. The village greeted Tom and Selena with a dusty road and the heavy smell of manure. "It's beautiful," Tom muttered to a disgruntled Tom. Selena looked at her brother sternly and walked briskly toward the houses. The girl had spotted the house with the green chimney from afar. That's where they needed to go. They found Miley in the vegetable garden. The woman was weeding the beds, and when she noticed the guests, she stopped what she was doing and straightened up. "How did you get here?" Miley asked in a friendly tone. "Are you tired? Hungry?" They assured her that they had gotten there all right. They didn't want to eat. The hostess was satisfied with these answers, and she led the boys into the house to show them where they could stay. Miley gave her brother and sister a rather large room. There were 2 beds, a dresser, and a mirror. Modest, but clean. The boy, of course, didn't like what he saw. "Well, there's no TV," Tom hummed. "Stop it," his sister hissed at him, afraid that Miley would hear her brother's lamentations and take offense. The brother and sister had been living in the village for a week, She helped Miley in the vegetable garden, cooked and cleaned the house. Unaccustomed to such labor, Selena fell into bed in the evening and quickly fell asleep. Although she was homesick in the village, but she realized that she had done everything right. In the first days, the calls from David did not stop, and he sent endless messages. But time went by, and her ex-husband called less and less often. This pleased Selena, but she was in no hurry to return to the city. Moreover, Tom, though he whined that the village is boring, but was able to find something to do to his liking. The boy made friends with a neighbor and with his help repaired an old bicycle. Now Tom had something to do. He rode his bicycle all day long in the street. He even got acquainted with the local boys and they accepted him into their company. Everything was quiet and peaceful until Selena felt sick. In the morning, Selena woke up early as always. She had to make breakfast and go help Miley in the vegetable garden before it got too hot. While doing chores, the girl realized that she didn't feel good. Selena felt dizzy, nausea, and weakness were present. She constantly wanted to sit down. "Do you feel sick?" Entering the kitchen, a worried Miley asked Selena. "Yes," she answered quietly and hurried outside as she started to feel nauseous. She must have been poisoned by something, Selena said when she got back inside. "Just what was it?" muttered the old woman. "It's strange. We're all eating together. You go and lie down and I'll feed Tom myself, and I'll take care of things," Miley told Selena. The girl went to her room, lay down on the bed and quickly fell asleep. Selena slept most of the day. When she got up in the evening, she felt considerably better. The weakness was present, but there was no nausea. Selena even ate a little, writing off her morning sickness as poisoning. But the next day, the story repeated itself. Selena was terribly nauseous and chilly. "Selena, I'm sorry, but maybe you're pregnant?" Looking at the girl, Miley asked a question. "I'm kind of," Selena started, but then she stopped and quickly got up from her seat and went to her room. There the girl looked at the calendar. Delayed. A week. How could she have forgotten about all this? "Oh no," roamed Selena aloud. Could it be? Selena was in a panic. Was she really expecting David's baby? Selena used to take the pill when they lived together, but she had stopped taking it after the divorce. Why would she do that if she didn't have a man? The girl in a panic rolled all these thoughts in her head and went out to the kitchen. Miley, sighing heavily, asked Selena, "Is there a pharmacy in the village?" The woman answered without asking too many questions. "2 stops from here. I'll explain how to get there, and you can buy medicine for me." All the way to the pharmacy, Selena's mind was racing with heavy thoughts. She couldn't believe that she could be pregnant. What to do? If it really happened, how to live on? Where to run to? The selection was minimal at the small drugstore, but there was a pregnancy test. Selena bought 2, just in case, and hurried back home. She was anxious to take the test and find out if she was expecting a baby or not. Torturing herself with the unknown was even worse than knowing the truth. After arriving back, the girl gave the medication to Miley and herself hurried to get some privacy to take the test. Following the instructions clearly, Selena took the test. Time dragged terribly slowly. 1, 2, 3. Selena squeezed her eyes shut, took a deep breath, and opened her eyes to look at the test. Well, 1 stripe is bright. Selena began to look closely. It seems that there is a second stripe visible. Barely noticeable, but there is. The girl tried not to panic. "It is necessary to do another test tomorrow morning. Then everything will be clear," Selena said loudly, calming herself. She spent the whole night in bed, and as soon as it bloomed outside the window, she hurried to take a second test. It showed 2 stripes. The second one was so clear that Selena didn't even need to look closely. The girl was seized by panic. She did not know what to do and how to be further. The first thing to do is to go to the doctor to find out for sure if there is a pregnancy and then make decisions, Selena said quietly but clearly. She cherished the thought that the test could have been a lie. That same day, Selena drove into town to the hospital. She was very lucky. The girl got to the appointment quickly. "Hello." Entering the doctor's office, Selena said, "I think I'm expecting a baby." "Hello," replied the doctor and began to ask the patient questions, and then told her to get into the chair. Well, muttered the doctor. "The uterus is enlarged. In general, you need to do an ultrasound to confirm the pregnancy. In the meantime, get up." Selena obediently got up from the chair, got dressed and waited for further orders from the doctor. Selena went to the ultrasound room. The thoughts in her head were confused. She could not believe in the reality of what was happening. Of course, Selena realized that unprotected intercourse could lead to such consequences. But the girl, even in a terrible dream, could not imagine that such a situation would happen to her. Now the pregnancy will be confirmed, and I'll go back to the doctor, take a referral for an abortion, Selena thought, but then she rethought. What abortion? It's murder. I will give birth, she thought in despair. And then Selena was invited into the office. She went in, sat down on the couch, and waited. Is this a planned baby? The doctor who performed the ultrasound asked. No, Selena answered quietly. Why? Are you going to keep the pregnancy? Without answering the girl's question, the doctor asked. I do not know, mumbled the girl. And what is it? Tell it like it is. You see, a little hesitated, said the doctor. At the moment there is no heartbeat in the fetus. Perhaps it is due to the small term, but most likely, in general, I will not scare and encourage you. Tomorrow take blood and in a couple of days come for a repeat ultrasound. If nothing changes, then you definitely need a cleanup, or maybe a pill will be given. This is not for me. Selena came out of the ultrasound room dead or alive. On the one hand, she didn't want this baby, but on the other hand, it was so scary. To live for a few more days and not realize what was happening. Selena hadn't managed to calm down even in the time it took her to get to the village. Going home, where Miley and Tom were waiting for her, was not something she wanted to do. Selena needed to calm down a bit, to come to her senses, to gather her thoughts. To be alone for a while, the girl headed to the river. Selena sat down on the bank away from the people who had come to swim due to the heat. The girl looked at the water and it beckoned, mesmerized her. Maybe I should jump. That's it, Selena suddenly thought, but immediately scolded herself for being weak-willed. I cannot jump. Who Tom will stay with? Mentally reasoned the girl. But Selena decided to jump. She wanted to freshen up a bit. She didn't have a swimsuit, so she decided to dive right in her clothes. She wore comfortable shorts and a t-shirt, not a long sundress, as she was going to do in the beginning. Taking in more air and pushing off the shore, Selena dived in. She knew the river was deep enough in this spot. She and Tom had gone swimming here a couple days ago. As she surfaced, Selena heard a stern shout. Hey, what are you doing? Are you going to drown yourself? Don't you drown yourself. After a couple of seconds, Selena saw the owner of the voice. A young guy swam towards her with quick movements. Can you hear me? The guy asked Selena. I can hear you, Selena replied. But what's wrong? I thought you had decided to drown yourself, the boy said. You were standing, and then bang and jumped into the water, right in your clothes. Well, I followed you. I was going to save you. The guy kept muttering. My name is Austin, by the way. I'm Selena. I wasn't going to drown myself. I was just going for a swim. Why are you wearing clothes? Austin asked, looking at the girl incredulously. I didn't bring my swimsuit, Selena mumbled, who felt uncomfortable. After all, by and large, the guy had read her mind. A couple minutes ago, she really wanted to jump in and not dive in. Selena climbed out onto the shore and began to bask in the sunlight. Who are you here to see? Questioned Austin, who had also climbed out of the water and was standing next to Selena looking at her. To Miley's, the girl said. From the 33rd house. Granddaughter, huh? The guy kept questioning her. Yeah, granddaughter. Selena didn't go into details. Come on, I'll walk you home. I don't like your behavior, Austin muttered. Selena shrugged, but she didn't refuse a chaperone. Miley and Tom looked at Selena, who came home in wet clothes, bewildered. What happened? Did you fall in the water? Miley asked worriedly. No, replied the girl quietly. She was ashamed of her appearance. She just wanted to swim, but she didn't have a swimsuit, so she jumped in with her clothes on. Uh-huh. And I'm right behind her, said Austin, shuffling from foot to foot nearby. Oh, I didn't see you. Miley spluttered. Why did you jump after her? Yeah, Austin mumbled. I thought she drowned herself. She jumped in her clothes and didn't come out for a long time, so I got scared and went to rescue her, he said silent. Selena, I'd also want to go to the river, whined Tom. The heat is so hot, and my grandmother does not let me alone. Come with me, please, the boy begged. Okay, Selena sighed heavily. She didn't want to go anywhere. The girl dreamed of only one thing, to lie down to put her thoughts in order. But she didn't want to let her brother go to the river alone, so she said, Now I'll change my clothes and let's go. Tom was happy. He too ran to change, and soon the boys went to the river, and Austin followed them. "Do you mind if I come with you?" the boy asked, looking at Selena. "I don't care." The girl shrugged uncertainly, and Tom was silent, so Austin decided that he could keep Selena and the boy company. All the way to the river, Austin talked nonstop. He talked about his work, his enlargements, and various amusing stories. Celine was silent at first, answering all the questions one syllable, but then she got involved in the conversation and even managed to distract herself a little from her unhappy thoughts. In the end, the guys had a great time at the river and went home satisfied. All night Celine rolled around in bed, overcome with heavy thoughts. She dreamed that she was living with a small child and Tom. They had nothing to eat. They were catastrophically short of money. To survive, Selena goes to her ex-husband for help, but he only laughs in her face and calls her the last words. From such a dream, the girl woke up in tears. She was shaking. She had to calm down a little and fall asleep, as she began to dream another terrible dream, and so on until the morning. In the end, Selena got up absolutely shattered, but she had no time to feel sorry for herself. It was necessary to hurry to the hospital to take tests. The girl hoped that today the doctors would be able to clarify, and she would know for sure whether her pregnancy was developing or not. But Selena was disappointed. "You still need to take a test tomorrow, and then after the weekend. Well, and then go for a follow-up ultrasound on Monday. Then everything will be decided," the gynecologist said calmly. Selena returned from the hospital in a depressed state. She could not imagine how else to live so many days in the unknown, which exhausts, eats from the inside. She didn't even have anything to distract herself with. Although Miley did not ask anything but understood a lot, so she did not allow Selena to work in the vegetable garden, and the girl could hardly be a good helper. She often had stomach aches, dizziness, and general weakness was present all the time. Having gone on Friday for another analysis, Selena waited with bated breath for Monday. She wanted clarity. She was driving herself deeper and deeper into depression with her thoughts and fantasies. At least her new acquaintance, Austin, periodically dropped by to visit, trying to cheer Selena up. The guy, despite the age difference, got along well with Tom, and they talked a lot. Selena had to put up with Austin for that reason too, though she wasn't open to socializing. Monday was approaching inevitably. Selena was looking forward to it and dreading it at the same time. She wanted certainty, but it frightened her. The girl drove to the hospital with a heavy heart. It was as if she felt that everything would be bad and mentally prepared for it. Having taken a blood test, Selena patiently waited for the results and the doctor working in the ultrasound room. She had to do one more examination, and only according to the results of all the tests, the gynecologist could say whether the girl was developing a pregnancy or not. The doctor conducted the ultrasound in silence, looking carefully at the monitor of the machine. "What is there?" impatiently asked the girl. "Lie still," the doctor said strictly, and Selena was silent. "You can get up." After a couple of minutes, the doctor gave his voice. "I'll take the results to your gynecologist, and you get dressed and go to him too." Selena didn't have time to say a word as the sonographer got up from his seat and left the office with a quick step. The girl realized that something was wrong with her baby, but Selena thought about it in a detached way. Without hurrying to dress, Selena went to the gynecologist's office. There was a small line, and the girl waited obediently. When it was time for her to enter the office, Selena was shaking. The tension was so strong that she could not cope with it. "Hello," Selena whispered as she opened the office door. "Hello, sit down," the gynecologist said glumly, looking at her. "I've had tests. I've had an ultrasound. Now I want to know what's wrong with my baby," Selena said quietly but firmly. "Unfortunately, the pregnancy is not progressing. You need a cleanup," the doctor said, looking at the patient point blank. Selena's eyes moistened. She didn't seem to want this baby, but she was scared. She was already slowly trying on the role of a mom. "No chance?" she asked quietly. The doctor shook his head silently, signaling that no miracle would happen. Selena lay in the room and looked at the ceiling. Her soul, as well as her head, was empty. She had been cleaned, and the girl had hoped to go home right away, but she'd been kept in the hospital for at least 5 days. Selena thought it was an eternity, but she dared not disobey the doctors. Selena diligently drank all the necessary pills and bravely put her ass under the injections. She was depressed by the hospital, by the atmosphere and the impossibility to run away, to hide, to give vent to her feelings. Selena was also worried about Tom. Of course, she called Miley and she assured Selena that she would look after the boy. She would feed him, make him drunk, and put him to bed. But that didn't make her feel any better. Her conscience tormented her for leaving her brother to a complete stranger. But she had no choice. And Selena was also annoyed by her roommates. Actually, the girls were quite nice and sweet, but with their desire to communicate, they drove Selena to a frenzy. She wanted to yell at her roommates and kick them out. And they didn't understand Selena, who shut herself off from the outside world and didn't want to talk to anyone. While Selena was in the hospital, she received several calls from Austin. The guy offered his help, but the girl refused it rather harshly. "Austin, don't call me please," Selena asked. "I don't mean anything. I'm fine. Just stay away from me, okay?" "Okay," replied Austin sadly. "I'm sorry." The guy didn't know what had happened to Selena. Tom only informed him that his sister was in the hospital. When Austin found out about it, he asked Miley for the girl's cell phone and started calling, but Selena reacted negatively to the calls, and it upset the guy. He liked Selena, even though she acted very cold to him. "Are you discharging me today?" Selena asked the doctor at Friday's rounds. "No, probably Monday," the doctor mumbled without even looking at the patient. "What's the point of me being here?" Selena said reasonably. "The course of antibiotics was injected into me, and I can take pills at home. Let me go against my signature. I don't want to sit here for another weekend." "All right," grumbled the doctor, who didn't like to be crossed. "A little later you'll be called for an ultrasound. If it shows that everything is normal, then I'll discharge you." "Thank you," Selena said quietly. She couldn't believe her good fortune that just a little bit more and she would be able to leave the hospital. Selena was determined that even if the ultrasound was not good, she would still leave. She would write a receipt and leave. She'd already found out that was the way to go. Of course, there are health risks, but Selena was ready to do anything, just to leave the hospital quickly. To the girl's delight, her ultrasound was good. Therefore, she was not just let go home, but discharged, giving all the necessary recommendations. Going outside and breathing in the warm air, Selena felt much better, though her soul still ached, but the girl tried to calm herself down. "I could hardly love a child conceived under such circumstances," Selena reasoned, "and I wouldn't dare to have an abortion either. And so, everything that happened, for the best. It was meant to be." Perhaps such thoughts may seem terrible to some, but they helped the girl, who had suffered a lot of grief, to cope with the misfortune, not to fall into depression and continue to live on. After the hospital, Selena tried to load herself with housework, so much that she could not think about anything. Even Miley's timid remarks that she should take care of herself didn't affect her. She wanted to do something, to be needed and not to think. Selena was afraid of her thoughts. They were too sad and heavy. But time passed and Selena's soul became calmer. It wasn't just the housework that contributed to this. The fact that her ex-husband's calls had stopped. If in the first weeks David called several times a day and even flooded Selena with messages, then the calls became less frequent. Once a day, once a couple days, once a week, and then stopped altogether. The girl was happy about it, though there was a little anxiety lurking in the back of her mind. She couldn't believe that David, who had been threatening and shouting, had suddenly given up his position. Selena waited for a catch, but so far there was no meanness. The ex-husband simply disappeared from the horizon, which gave the girl the opportunity to calm down a little and start breathing fully. Also, Selena was being actively courted by Austin. His courtship was so childish that it was hilarious to the girl. The boy carried Selena armfuls of wildflowers, brought berries from his vegetable garden. Despite the fact that Austin was a year older than Selena, he was terribly shy of her and didn't always understand when she was joking and when she was being serious. But the summer came to an end, and Selena and Tom had to go back to the city. It was time for the girl to think about work. To live on the payments that were given to her brother, it was unrealistic, and the boy needed to go to school. So returning to the city was inevitable. "You will definitely come next year," Miley told her brother and sister when they packed their bags and were about to leave the hospitable house. "Better yet, come for New Year's Eve." The old woman continued, "It's beautiful here. You can go skiing, ice skating." "I don't think mine are going to make it." Miley waved her hand, "But don't forget, I've grown attached to you over the summer. We've grown fond of you, too," Selena and Tom said in unison and hugged the woman. Selena said, "We have to go, or it'll be dark before we get home," Selena said, picking up her bag and going outside. No sooner had she reached the gate than she saw Austin. He was running toward Miley's house. "Oh, I made it," Austin mumbled to himself as he entered the lot. "Why were you in such a hurry?" Selena asked, surprised. "I thought we said goodbye yesterday." "I need to talk to you, Selena," a little embarrassed, answered Austin. "About what?" "Well, Selena, I like you a lot," Austin said, digging into the pocket of his work pants. "Austin, I like you too. You're a nice guy and I'm glad we met," Selena said calmly. "When you're in town, call me and we'll go to the movies. But now we have to leave, or we won't be able to wait for the bus." "Tom, let's go," Selena said to her brother and started to walk around Austin. "Wait," the guy begged, finally finding what he couldn't find in his pocket for so long. "Well, what is it?" "Shut up a minute, let me get my thoughts together," Austin said, and then blurted out, "Selena, marry me." Saying that, the guy handed Selena a simple silver ring. "What?" the confused girl asked. "Marry me," Austin said a little louder and more confidently, and looked at Selena point blank. At that moment, everyone was looking at Selena. Austin, Tom, and Miley. Everyone was waiting to see what the girl would say. "I agree," Selena answered unexpectedly to everyone, and especially to herself. She didn't love Austin, at least not the way she felt when she married David. But Selena liked Austin. She was attracted to the guy's openness and kindness, his desire to take care of her. And Selena also liked the lack of impudence and vulgarity. For all the time of communication, Austin did not allow himself a single act that could catch the girl. Even once kissed Selena, Austin apologized for his impulse for a long time, although Selena herself was not against it. She probably agreed for only one reason: she wanted to have a man by her side. Selena was tired of being alone. She was also afraid that David would show up and she wouldn't be able to cope with his onslaught, his threats. And if she had a husband, she reasoned, he would be able to protect her. Austin had another undoubted bonus. He got along well with Tom. Over the summer, the boy had managed to sincerely love his older friend, and this pleased Selena. The wedding was 2 months away, or rather there was no celebration. Selena and Austin signed, and then came to the village, where the parents of the guy set the table. Selena didn't mind. After all, she had no one from her relatives. On her holiday, the girl invited only Miley and Masha, with whom she managed to become friends over the summer. The girls often called each other. To live in the village, Selena flatly refused. "Austin, you understand, Tom has a study, and there is no school here. You will have to travel." "What about winter?" "I don't want that. Besides, Tom's been attending this school since first grade. There's no need to change anything, and there's no work here. Where am I supposed to go? The village store? I'm not cut out for life in the country. I've been come here for the summer, but not permanently." Austin did not contradict his young wife, and having collected his rustic belongings, went to the city. The boy quickly found a job. Austin was a good mechanic, and he was hired to work in the city economy. Selena also found a job, Tom went to school, and life was slowly getting better. First time after returning to the city, Selena was very afraid that David would appear and break everything. From neighbors and acquaintances, the girl learned that her ex-husband was looking for her, guarded near the entrance, but then suddenly disappeared. Selena was very surprised. Only a year later, from mutual acquaintances, she learned why David so sharply retreated. As it turned out, after the escape to the village, David, as if off the chain, he took a vacation at work and during the day guarded his ex-wife near the entrance. And at night, the guy would go to the club. He'd relax there, drink. At one of the discos, David met a girl, and in the morning woke up with her in the same bed. The guy drove her out, and 2 weeks later, the girl again stood on the doorstep of his apartment, assuring him that she was expecting a child. David, of course, wanted to kick the girl out, but she had a difficult father who forced the boy to marry his daughter. There were rumors that the girl wasn't pregnant by David. She just found a simpleton to cover her sin. Maybe she was. Only the guy didn't bother to find out. The rich father-in-law took David into the family business, and the guy got the benefits and power he never dreamed of. Even the bonus of a wife and child didn't irritate him anymore, and he'd forgotten all about Selena. But Selena found out about all this much later. At first, she was very worried that David would appear and her life would go downhill. But time went by. David did not appear. Selena and Austin adjusted their everyday life, learned to live without quarrels and mutual offenses. To her surprise, Selena soon realized that she loved her husband strongly, maturely. This discovery was facilitated by one unpleasant incident. One day, Austin was late for work. Selena tried to call her husband to find out where he was, but the guy's phone was disconnected. After suffering until midnight, the girl began to call hospitals. In one of them, she was told that in the evening they received a guy with severe beatings and without documents. Hearing this, Selena began to hurriedly dress, on the way persuading Tom to stay at home, not to go with her. But no sooner had the girl left the apartment than she saw her husband rushing to the entrance. "Where were you?" Selena pounced on Austin. "At work," the guy replied, surprised. "And where are you going?" "Why did you call me that you were running late? I've already changed my mind. I'm going to the hospital. I was told there is a guy lying there, similar to you." The last words Selena already shouted, unable to cope with hysteria. "Easy, easy." Austin stroked her head. "I texted you. I called but you didn't pick up. So I texted Koo and my phone went off. I didn't think you'd worry. I warned you," mumbled the guy, hugging his wife. "I saw the unanswered call and there was no text. I was so worried, and I love you so much," Selena said through her tears. "I love you so much too," Austin spoke softly. He was amazed. In the 6 months they had lived together, Selena had never once told her husband that she loved him, and he hadn't demanded it. He was fine with Selena, and he didn't want to start a pointless showdown. But now, hearing that his wife loved him, Austin was truly happy. Selena wandered sadly down the street, wondering what to do, how to be. It was the second year they had been living with Austin, and a little over a year they had been planning on having children. But it wasn't working out. There were no visible reasons for the failures. But to dispel all doubts, the guys underwent an examination. Doctors assured Austin and Selena that they were healthy and that everything would work out. But time passed, and the long-awaited pregnancy did not come, and the girl was depressed. She decided to visit one of the best gynecologists in the city. To get to him to see Selena had to sign up 3 months in advance. She made an appointment, waited for her turn, hoping for a miracle. But the doctor did not say anything concrete. "You are doing well. I do not see any problems and obstacles to conception. Maybe it's the partner?" the doctor suggested. "No." The girl shook her head dejectedly. "Everything is fine with her partner." Selena left the eminent doctor with a terrible feeling of longing and anxiety. The girl did not know how to solve her problem. She no longer believed in anything. To distract herself a little, Selena wandered to the market. She bought some meat, fresh vegetables, and was about to go to the house, as her attention was attracted by a gaunt old woman. The old woman was sitting on a small chair and selling all sorts of things. It was obvious that the old woman was short of money, and Selena decided to buy something from her to help her. Selena said, "Give me that jar over there," turning to the old woman and pointing to the items she liked. She didn't like anything else, but the jar could be useful. Austin liked to keep his screws in boxes like that. "Don't take it, daughter," the woman said, squinting her slightly blinded eyes. "Take a flower." "I don't like flowers, Granny," Selena frowned. "They don't take root." "But you take it, try it," the old woman insisted. "It is not a simple flower, but a magic flower. It will fulfill your most cherished wish. You just have faith." "It will not fulfill my wish, grandmother." Selena grinned bitterly, but she took the flower, and the jar she liked at first too, giving the old woman twice as much money as she had asked for.